So welcome everybody to the Federation of Writers Scotland's annual Tinsel Tales event. We're going to have a wonderful afternoon because there's some marvellous readers in the lineup. I can't wait to hear everyone. The domestics, well, I've obviously muted everyone. Remember to unmute when it's your turn. I'm sure everybody will tell you anyway. That's the saying of the 20s, is you're on mute. So be aware of any background noise, etc. The afternoon is going to be in 3 sections with 2 10-minute breaks. The first 10-minute break will just be a countdown. The second 10-minute break, we've got a nice collection of pictures of Makar's past, present and future, and also what's written on the Makar and the Scriever scroll, so you can see a bit about the description of what their job is. Everyone's got a running order. We might not run exactly to the timings that are there, but please stick to the time that you've been allowed. We've got 2 excellent hosts to lead you through the afternoon, and we'll keep an eye out to make sure that if there's anybody not here, we'll move on to the next person who can come back. In the final section, we're going to say a fond farewell and thank you to our current Scriever and Makar, Charlie and Finola. Following that, we're going to be having a virtual handover and the inauguration for our new Scriever, Leela Sommer and Jim Mackintosh, our new Makar. The middle section will be hosted by our very efficient membership secretary, M.T. Taylor. What a terrific job she does as well of getting everybody here and knowing what they should be doing. Our poems and short stories have appeared in print and online in Northworlds now. The Glasgow Review of Books, The Lake and Football Memories, among lots of other publications. Our poem in the Declaration of Arbroath, which will be coming out next year, it's just about to go to the printers, was very thought-provoking and extremely moving. She's also a haiku mistress. I've just made that up, whatever it is, but I think it sounds really good. For the first section, we're fortunate to have one of the founder members of the Federation, Mark Sherland. Mark recently became president of the Robert Burns World Federation. He's also the clerk of the Incorporation of Weavers of Glasgow. For many years, he was president of the Scottish Writers Association. He also hosts the Sudden Fame event during I Write Festival. What a shame that didn't go ahead, but we'll look forward for that next year, hopefully, fingers crossed. During the first break, we'll have a countdown, as I said, and then MT will be there with a trusty bell to make sure we're all back. So listen out for the bell, and she'll take us through the next part of it. At our live events, we normally have books to sell. So you can buy our anthology, go onto the website and you've got all the instructions there. Email me, I'll get it arranged for you, no problem. That's surfing. The other thing is, it's lovely to give books at Christmas time, and we usually have a selection of our members' books. So think about that, Christmas just round the corner. In January, to whom it may concern, our Arbroath anthology will be printed, and we'll hold the launch later, as I said. And you can see a wee preview on the website as individual pieces are coming up there. So finally, the Federation never asks people for a joining fee, but we do accept donations any time of the year if anybody wants to do that. So, and as I said, after the first session, we'll go to a 10-minute break and MT will restart after that. So without further ado, I'll pass you on to Mark Sherland, who's looking superbly Christmassy and Scottishy. So lovely to see you, Mark.
Hello, it's lovely to see you all again. I don't get to see the Federation of the Scottish Federation as often as I would like to, because I'm very involved with the Robert Burns World Federation now. I put on my chain of office as the president of the Robert Burns World Federation, so you can see it, because I've had very few opportunities to get out much recently to actually wear it when I should be wearing it at different Burns events. But the only thing I'm worried about is that, dressed as I am with my Christmas hat on and the chain of office, that somebody might mistake me being my height as a Christmas decoration and stick me on top of a Christmas tree. But you know, I'm willing to put up with that if need be. Anyway, as I say, it's great to be here and to be chairing this first section. And I think we'll just get underway. We're a wee bit ahead of time, but it gives us a wee bit of flexibility. If somebody overstays their reading slot, we have a wee bit of flexibility to build in. So I'm looking at my list, which has been given to me very usefully, I have to say. This is one of the first times I've ever seen this being done, and it's a great idea to have the intros in advance. So my thanks for that. However, those of you who know me know that I'm a little irreverent, so stand by. You could end up with a few words extra in terms of your introductions. So if you don't recognize them, tough luck. You know, it's just me. You know. Anyway, our first performer, don't know whether it's called performers, reciters, or whatever, but our first participant is Chris Tate. Now, Chris was from a large family of sugar producers, but he got excommunicated for not being quite sweet enough. He's a poet, a fantasy writer from Shetland. He's attended writing groups and open mic sessions across the Central Belt. She has also had chances to perform at gigs and festivals, read on the radio, and recorded at a studio. She has also published 2 graphic novels, Proving the Devil is in the Detail. The first one is called Diablo, The Fantastical Adventures of an Unloved Chess Piece. My goodness, I'm going to try that again. Diablo, The Fantastical Adventures of an Unloved Chess Piece. Now that is just a spanking, excellent title. And also Diablo and the Leprechaun Figurehead. That's an equally good title. I just love that title. Chris works as a curator assistant for Government Radio, where her work can be heard, especially if you live next door or listen just behind the door, and then you'll get a sense of her work. So Chris Tate, would you like to take over the microphone and make sure you are turned on?
Okay. Trowse at Brocket borders, skies summon about the water, ram's scarves are not at tiders. The shore is like showed ladder, tying the islands together. There is corns o' mull powder, o'er the rock shooters, rummelled stones are gathered, lambs roar for their midders. Prince sheep come to be faders, brocks wrecked by rock ladders, lassos spun by the speeders, coins roll through the header. For a dowry tae a doubter, sign peppers fae a ogre, across swittles o' water, sprinkle in wi' sleekit otters. So they gie the spiked quarter, full o' slaves and martyrs, windows upo' the horrors, wi' trows at Brocket borders, and a giant's beard. Seas like melted chalkboards, etched by poisoned birds, maxed them swallow up swords, and fire breathe out the words, that trickles in and out the gills, toxic umbilical cords, and o'er the rig's neat bows, that are now tart and tarred. Pretty maids in a row are so badly steered, like the burns and seas that flow where zombie litter is poured. Thistles and nettles grow like a giant's beard. Hit was dilled and ploughed, where the crofts were cleared. And mermaids' mugshots. Mermaids' mugshots, landladies are thick as thieves. Traffic is on the trot, naked forests slip their lives. Docks are drift with bits o' huts that hung o'er boats shoehorned. Ships need first aid for their cuts. The figurehead is very stern. The sea is soup o' oil spill clots that plugs the gyoes and caves, puddle gauges read o' knots and crosses o' pirate graves, buried wi' their gold crocks by the servants and the slaves, wi' sails like dreepin' socks that would wring out mony waves. Tooth nails poke a fishing box, ma's roostin' for a nest, Nittern dunders o' their quacks, croog by a crooked mast. And ruins are hooses and wickets. Ruins are hooses and wickets, wi' lights lang slocket. Banter sounded like ballads, yards are sproutin' salad. Skies like apple peelings, Eden's storytelling. The prodigal doubter travelled atil a oyster. The girse was a bronze carpet. Monsters were wittered in nets. The rain slay like daggers, and the snowmen staggered. Centre skin, rigs and cots, a heron cruded mot. Fish swam out the sleeves, Rig's headdress was hairst shaves. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. That was absolutely glorious. Absolutely wonderful. I just love when Shallandian is being used. It's just a beautiful sound. It really is. So
Thanks very much.
well done. I
Cheers.
really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed that. We're going on to our next reader, and the next reader I'm just going to check before I get started into the whole blurb is Renetta Boyle in the room. Renetta, are you there? Yes, I see you. Yeah, and wearing a very tasteful bonnet as well. I do like your bonnet. And is that a scarf as well? Wrapped up warm for the cold. Absolutely. Okay. Right. Renetta is best known as a tall, tale, tongue-twisting, torturous, timid troubadour. She's a kid-lit poet and a teabag artist. Now, I do not know what a teabag artist is, but I hope to find out somewhere later on. She is resident storyteller for Wigton Festival Company, a patron of reading, and former reader-in-residence for the Scottish Book Trust. She is soon to be lead reader for Open Book and is passionate about Lapidus, who encourage writing for well-being. Mostly, she is delighted to be here and may even teach us to play the bagpipe with our nose, a skill highly to be cherished in the cavalier country of credible Christmas crackers. Sorry, she started it with her terrible, all-telling, tongue-twisting twisters. So I'm going to hand over to Renita.
Hello, everyone. It's very nice to see you. Can you see me and hear me? I can't see myself on the screen.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, and you can see me because I can't see myself on the screen.
We can indeed.
Okay, well, you did ask for a little mayhem. It's very nice to see you this morning or this afternoon. So the first one is called Sledding. It was in Dreek. Many of you might have had children's poems in Dreek. So this one is called Sledding, and I'm going to do it with a bit of Mackintosh, which I am learning. We're going to the hill, we're sliding down the hill. Grab your coats and mitts and hats. We're going to the hill. The snow lays deep and icy chill. We're going to the hill. We're going down the hill, we're sledding down the hill in socks and scarves and furry boots. We're sledding down that hill. Just the thought gives us a thrill. We're racing down the hill. We're racing down the hill, we're racing down the hill, pulling our red sleds behind, we're racing down the hill. Will you come too? Oh, say you will, and we'll meet you at the hill. We're going down the hill, we're going down the hill, laughing and singing as we go. We're sledding down the hill, and in our snowy dreams we're still sledding down the hill. All right. So here's one just hot off the press today. It's a story for today. It's the legend of the evergreen trees, which is an old legend, and I've just put it into some rhyme. I'm very much missing all the kids I would normally be telling stories to, so you can be my kids today. Winter was coming. Soon it would snow. King Frost would tell the north wind to blow through the north woods, where all of the trees were bracing themselves for the icy freeze. Summer birds knew it was time to take wing and fly south to the warmth until the spring. But one little bird couldn't take to the sky. She tried and tried, but she just couldn't fly. This little bird had a broken wing and would need to stay all winter until spring. Poor little bird, so hungry and cold, feeling so lonely with nowhere to go. She hopped up to Birch, the loveliest of trees. "Oh, please, Silver Birch, can you help me, please? May I rest in your branches until the spring?" said the little bird with the broken wing. "Little bird," said Silver Birch, "be on your way. I must care of myself. Find somewhere else to stay." Poor little bird, so hungry and cold, feeling so lonely with nowhere to go, she hopped up to the oak, the mightiest of trees. "Oh, mighty oak, can you help me, please? May I rest in your branches until the spring?" said the little bird with the broken wing. "Little bird," said oak, "be on your way. You'll eat my acorns. Find somewhere else to stay." Poor little bird, so hungry and cold, feeling so lonely with nowhere to go, she hopped up to Willow, quiet among trees. "Oh, Willow, can you help me, please? May I rest in your branches until the spring?" said the little bird with the broken wing. "Little bird," said Willow, "be on your way. I don't help strangers. Find somewhere else to stay." Poor little bird, shivering in the wind. What will she do until the spring? Now Spruce saw the bird, so hungry and cold, and knew she was lonely with nowhere to go. "I see," said Spruce, "that you have a broken wing. Would you like to stay with me until spring?" "I can help too," said Pine. "I am tall and strong. I'll protect you both from the north wind all winter long." Then Juniper added, "And you'll need something to eat. You can munch on my berries, such a nice sweet treat." The little bird was delighted. "Oh yes, if you please. Thank you all so much. You are the kindest of trees." So the little bird with the broken wing settled into the branches of the spruce until spring, was protected by pine all winter long, ate juniper berries, and filled the woodland with song. And on Christmas Eve, under the stars so bright, the little bird sang her thankfulness all through the night, while the snow gently settled on the kindest of trees and left them sparkling for all to see. The trees cared for the bird until the healing of her wing and the return of all the other birds in the warmth of the spring. That summer was happy, for all the birds were pleased to have such a place to rest their wings in the kindest of the trees. But winter would come again. Soon it would snow. King Frost would soon tell the north wind to blow. The north wind asked the Frost King, "Can I go out and play? Touch every tree with my icy breath and watch their leaves fly away?" "Don't touch the spruce, pine, or juniper," said Frost King. They were so kind to the little bird with the broken wing. Let them keep their needles and remain evergreen. In every season, especially Christmas, their kindness will be seen. So the north wind stripped the birch, the oak, and the willow of their leaves, leaving them to shiver in the icy snow and sleet. But the kindest of the trees stayed green winter, summer, fall, and spring. And sometimes on a Christmas Eve, you can still hear the little birds sing.
Beautiful. Wonderful.
Merry
Absolutely
Christmas,
wonderful.
everyone.
That was absolutely great. Well, that's after that story, I'm not pining for Christmas. Well done, Renita. That was a really wonderful story. I love folkloric stories, so you've really cheered me up today. So thank you very much for that. Okay, we're on to our next reader, and Rosie is somebody that I know of because Rosie was very involved in the Federation of Writers in the organizing committee, and I'm really pleased that she's taking part today. In 2019, Rosie suffered a major stroke. Until this time, she was a poet, oral storyteller, and songwriter who earned her way in life through animal care work. Since then, she has been recovering through her voice, through poetry and active gratitude, and we could certainly all do with more of that. What a wonderful name, Maplebeck. It's just a wonderful surname. So I'm not even going to make any jokes around about it. I don't think they need any. It is a beautiful name. That's all I'm going to say. Rosie, on to you.
Thanks, Mark. I'm going to do a little bit of storytelling here. This was about a little dog who I thought all Border Terriers were nice until I met this one. So he's called the Tyrant of Burnham. Beware wee Jock, his teeth like a lion's, gnashing his fangs with great defiance. He guards the station of Dunkeld and Burnham. If you walk by his gate, he'll duly show them. With grizzled beard, dripping slabber, he rushed and sank his teeth into the two of us, retreated with a smile behind his glass door, pretending he had never moved a paw. Brave wee Jock, bold wee Jock, your time is very nearly up. When the cops hear of your nasty habits, there'll be a police record of your canine antics. Why do you rage? What makes you mad? Your owners seem so very sad, regretting that you blocked your book. The daughter's nerves are clearly shook. Brave wee Jock, mad wee Jock, Border Terrier of Perthshire stock. Beware wee Jock, your time's almost over. You've lived out your life in Highland clover, but now's the time you must repent. Tayside policemen have been sent to keep you right or mark your case. You've been a borderline disgrace. Brave wee Jock, bold wee Jock, your time is very nearly up. If you should chance to Burnham's grounds, beware of errant fighting hounds. Keep your limbs in armour girt to ensure you can't be hurt by brave wee Jock, mad wee Jock, Border Terrier of Perthshire stock. Good night, wee Jock, my telling's o'er. My punctured leg is bruised and sore. Soon only photographs will remain of this, a tale of blood and pain, of brave wee Jock, mad wee Jock, Border Terrier of Perthshire stock. It's the only revenge I could get on him. It's the usual poet's revenge. Yeah, this is also a revenge. Prior to the stroke, my blood pressure was put up by the relationship and the treatment I got, and him disappearing off with my money and all sorts of other things. And yeah, so in my head, Funeral Blues, W.H. Auden was going round and round that rhythm and Stop All the Clocks, and it wouldn't go away until I wrote using it. That's the way of it, isn't it? Change all the locks, cut off the internet, prevent iCloud connecting, remove consents, silent unsaid argument, look at what we've done. Bring out the whiskey, let the evening run on. Let ravens chatter in heavens overhead, scraping out their message that love here is dead. Put the landfill bin out, full ripe of both our pasts. Bring help in by nailing white flag on our masts. You, my advisor, knew sacred ways to grow, shone light in time of torment, entered our flow, saw the future where our twined path was long. I thought love lasts forever, maybe I was wrong. My succor is not wanted now, you've left my home. Packed life in sea boxes, distributed each one, threw away the learning, the decade we shared, grinding child-made grooves of running, living scared. Back into recovery time. Why 2 a.m. and restless? Why do I wake in the quiet hours, in the silence before the dawn, when only the cat's snore rends the air and my heart thumps out forlorn? No planes roar past, no bus, no train, no tractors lugging sheep. A lone taxi cab slides on by in a morning crawling creep. My mind is burling like I'm all wheels, a washing machine of thought. Annual accounts, insurance, tax, the lists of things I've bought. The liabilities I still owe, the business as a whole. Accounts I've been estranged from, delegated, I can't thole. The year's end is late to make, the accountant must be given, the evidence of failure as the partnership was riven. The fraudulence must be picked out, the thefts be brought to light. And so I cannot rest as day creeps in past dark of night. A bit more positive. Ayrshire Voices, once I got out and I went back to my singing groups and I went back to playing the harp again. Sure that muscle memory would do it. I would know how to play. I couldn't remember a damn thing. I couldn't remember anything. So I had to start all over again. So, will you sing? Will you let your heart express and breathe again? Will you open up your chest, listen to the rest in harmony? Will you tantalize with tunes, read notation runes, let your voice soar up so high above the stave, beyond being wage slave, becoming bounteous, finally relax your heart, become, sing on, as one, and play your sonic part? Will you share your joy as art? Will you play? Will you strum the strings today and let them ring? Will you practice every one till you find a natural run to make strings sing, until it becomes a joyful happening? How are we doing for time?
I think that's probably your time off, Rosie. But a wonderful set. I like your headwear, by the way. I did mean to mention it earlier, but that, yes, I think they are absolutely apt for the occasion. That seriousness and dedication to attention to detail, absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much, Rosie. Thank you. Okay, now they're trying to confuse me by changing the list of intros, and the timing list are different in this particular instance. So I'm going to make my own decision about who's next, because that's the kind of power you have when you're the MC. You can do these things. So I'm going to put Leslie Traynor up next, because I always like to put Leslie Traynor up next, because a target is always useful. So Leslie, my friend Leslie. So Leslie is a Scottish writer, published nationally and internationally, most recently by Vagabond. There's something about tramp there, but no. 404 Inc. Drich and the Red Squirrel Press. Are you not impressed with the fact that I can say Drich as well as I can? Her poetry chapbook will be published in spring 2021 by Drich. Though it's not actually really Drich. I mean, her poetry is actually okay. She's a bit of a fair weather poetry book, just in case Drich puts you off. So don't be put off by Drich. That's who's publishing it. Winner of the 2019 Edinburgh International Book Festival Memoir Writing Prize. Shortlisted for the 2019 Beyond Borders International Writing Prize. I give you Leslie Traynor.
How do you follow that? Thank you, Mark. I have to say thank you. Right.
You do have to say thank you. Yes.
I've got a number of.
You've frozen, Leslie.
A few poems that landscape. Yes.
You're okay now.
Yeah.
You're okay now. You froze there for a second, but you're back, back with us.
Okay. All right. The first one is really influenced by my mum, and it's called Hedgerow Prophecy. My mother tells me she feels a change in the air. She knows these things and I should pay attention. Headaches and curdled milk herald a summer storm. She knows these things and I should pay attention. When cows lie down to chew the cud, bring your washing in, rain will soon arrive. She knows these things and I should pay attention. It always comes from the west, sea fret gathered and pulled down over the moors. She knows these things and I should pay attention. Soft rain soaks you through, May's rain nourishes the skin. She knows these things and I should pay attention. Seasons are tracked with the passage of geese, snowdrops reaching out of snow. She knows these things and I should pay attention. A hint of coconut breathed over the moor, the start of spring. She knows these things and I should pay attention. Early rowan berries profess a hard winter. She knows these things and I should pay attention. My mother feels winter in the air. I pick bounty from hedgerows, preserve it for dark days, and watch geese leave. The next one is called The Other Side. To get to the far side of the river, to the sharp sloped side, the side with trees, we hopscotch slabs scoured when the river bubbles up, leap gaps big enough to catch a child. Long stem spearwort traps our toes, slows our rush to the gap where a long forgotten storm pulled a tree as neat as any dentist. Below, in the deepest run of the cart, an inky smudge alerts where the riverbed opens, big enough to trap a coach and horses. Our mothers tell of the night 100 years before when the river boiled, ran faster than a child fleeing, the Andersons ordering their coachman across the slabs, wheels slipping, all pulled, screaming into hell. on the other side of the river, on the sharp slope side. We tug down this rope tied to a high branch, the branch that shades our mother's warning. Dare each other to wrap our legs around the knot, swing out over the vortex to glimpse a trapped coach and horses. Next one is called On Wakening. There is a thing in me that dreams of trees, of running with abandon through baby skin soft lilac, a caress of Parma violets lingering on the tongue, the taste of childhood. There is a thing in me that dreams of trees, of summer high above the loch, where Rowan huddles, holds light prisoner, holds me in sweet silence, releases winter as drops of blood. There is a thing in me that dreams of trees bisecting a barren latitude, growing across savanna. So arms wide, seeds slip from taut fingers, take a leap of faith in red soil. And the last one is actually based on my grandfather and a true incident. Busby, May 1941. I watched my grandfather being helped onto the tweed settee, my aunt catching his arm as he falls back, his wee legs swinging out, stretching to his full 5'3". This is the man who ran to the window that night, double summertime lighting up the sky at 10, witnessed the low swipe of a German plane overhead. Readied for the shout to arms, except the home guard were never armed. Maybe he would have felt the chill, perhaps the thrill, capturing an enemy pilot in a newly sown field, no one recognizing the man who was not of this village, not one to walk down Main Street to the Cart Vale, buy a pint. A stranger sitting calmly on the floor, dusty from the last village dance, blonde hair bloodied by the late evening sun, while outside friends and neighbours gathered to catch a glimpse of the traitor, Hess, waiting for the world to arrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. A wonderful range of material. We really are being treated very well today by all of the poets and contributors. Some wonderful stories, some really interesting texture. So well done, Leslie. You're not a trainer. You're actually there. You don't need to be trained anymore. You're house trained. Yeah. Thanks much. Okay, we're moving on, and our next reader is going to be David Blamen. And David took to writing poetry in his retirement. He writes, now wait for this, he writes mainly in English, but also in Scots, Spanish, and macaronic verse, includes snatches of Yiddish, Afrikaans, and anything else which pops out of his cultural heritage. Now that is quite a range to kind of squeeze into your work. It really is. I'm waiting to see if there's any Russian or anything else that slips in there just to surprise me. His Scotch Yiddish ballad, The Trebler's Tale, won the Scots Language Association's Sangshaw competition in 2020. And Why Dare Scriven Scots was shortlisted for the Wigton Poetry Prize 2020. David was the featured poet in the Federation's November newsmail, so you can read more about him there. And believe me, I'm going to be reading more about him. Let me tell you. David, your chance.
Thank you, Mark. I recently entered a poetry competition in which the rules insisted on double spacing, and went on to say that there was a 40-line limit, and went on to say that the 40-line limit included the spaces between the lines. This poem is dedicated to the compilers of those rules. A rarity of readers. This murmuration of Makars, this susurration of Scrievers, my malapropism of metaphors, approaches a drawbridge of editors over emotive mañanas, with their fetishism for fonts, extravagant elaboration of expectations, rich repertoire of rejections, resorting to a reliquary of revisions, costing a cosmography of competitions, mangling a misunderstood masterpiece. We contrive a minor 40-liner for a shift of shiftless sifters who carefully count all the spaces between the lines, because, as is well known, it's the white space that counts. It's well known that I won this competition if it hadn't been rigged, if they'd only counted the legal lines, if they hadn't counted the spaces between the lines. No prizes for guessing which well-known politician I'm channeling in the last lines of that poem, which allows me to segue seamlessly into my next and final poem, Battle Hymn of the Republicans, which appears in the Bread and Roses anthology. Here it is, Bread and Roses Anthology 2020. This is, of course, based on a well-known American anthem, which has itself gone through numerous variations. John Brown's Body, Battle Hymn of the Republic, Solidarity Forever, to mention just a few. Like many political poems, mine may only be of temporary resonance, so it's good to be able to read it today before it leaves office. I'm going to sing the first verse, and then, because I'm a kind person at heart, I will just recite the rest. He is trumpeting his truth now and shall never call retreat. He is trampling out the bearers of fake news with every tweet. He has made America great again. He'll get the virus beat, and his truth is marching on. Glory, glory, don't you just love the guy? Snake oil quack eats American pie. Gory story, what a hell of a way to die, while he just keeps ranting on. We're not done with spangled banners by the early light of dawn. We're not done with lining up for guns and thinking we're newborn, cheering mad ejaculations from the rostrum on the lawn, but the world has passed us by. If he tells us we'll drink Kool-Aid, if he tells us we'll drink bleach, and we'll try injecting sunshine in those parts the sun can't reach, though his message keeps on changing. Did you hear his latest speech? For his truth keeps marching on. Is there anything to rid us of the greedy parasite who would crush dissentient voices with the science of his might, who would plunge a once proud nation into endless, mindless night? Just November coming on. Thank you.
Thanks, David. You certainly, I'm glad you trumpeted your trumping poetry, which certainly trumps the real thing. That's all I can say about that. That was an absolutely excellently politically poised poem. But as you say, unfortunately, political poetry often has its day. But I'm so glad you read that, really am. And I have to say, I accord with the sentiments completely. Okay, we're now going into looking at our next poet or writer, and that's Ruth Aylat. Ruth teaches and researches computing in Edinburgh and often includes science and technology in her work. She is widely published, sometimes appears with a robot. Now this is very intriguing, a robot. R2-D2, C-3PO. I'm really wanting to know which robot it is, though not today apparently. Her first single author pamphlet, Pretty in Pink, is due out with a company called the Four Words next year, and looks at the lives of women from birth onwards. She contributed some robot poems. There's definitely a theme about robots in this. She contributed some robot poems to the book Uncanny Bodies, out this summer with Luna Press, and is currently working on a singular sequence called A Singularity. Ruth has 2 pamphlets out soon, Pretty in Pink, which is about pink robots, due out in February with 4 Words, and Queen of Infinite Space, due out in November, with Maytree, which really ought to be released in the month after April, as that's when that tree is in flower. So, you know, that's really when it should be. Anyway, Ruth, please perform.
Hi, no robot today, I'm afraid.
I'm disappointed.
Yes, I'm sure everyone is disappointed. It's a now robot for anyone who wants to know. The problem with the introductions is the poetry becomes an anticlimax. However, I'm going to do 3 short pieces here. The first is from Pretty in Pink, in fact, so you can buy it and read it if you like it. It's called True Story, because I read it in a newspaper and it was crying out to be turned into a poem, so I duly did. True story. I have a body in a bag, she said, a skeleton from when I was a nurse. It's wrapped in plastic sheeting in the shed. Her friend just laughed. But things became much worse. A cancer got her, and they found the thing, cut into it, released a dreadful smell, revealed a hand, all mummified with ring, an arm, pajamas, then a face as well. 18 years ago, she said, her husband left. He'd had affairs, was violent, never cared. They'd noticed she had hardly seemed bereft, but had she really killed him? Really dared? Then found the fracture marks across his head exactly matched the stone frog by her bed. Definitely a true story.
I like it.
So the next one's perhaps a little more light-hearted. Christmas presents from kings. Mine, carefully chosen, of course, all come from King and Bros, a cavernous emporium of stuff, trinkets and oddities, enough to stocking fill the universe. For my toddling great niece, golden chocolate coins, indicative of future wealth, though present melted mess. For her teenage sister, sandalwood joss sticks, not a lot of angst that can't be fixed with silent meditation. My niece likes posh face cream, anti-aging with added vitamin E, a special 2-for-1 offer. But can it give a girl's face back to me? And finally, back to slightly more serious piece. Washael is the Saxon greeting for Yule, means good health, I think, Washael. So this is kind of a Yule poem. Washael. A slipknot on the field gate, while the sun sprays glitter through the branches, great strides across the mud and cowpats, and puddle-divided tractor ridges, arms that swing out with their own weight as if to grasp the wind and the damp. Who can think on the log scale of aging? These rapid moments once used to drip so slowly down the mind. Where did all that mystery go? The darkest dark holding the impossible birth, or the shiny wrappings of happiness to come? Suck on old carols, vampire the nativity play, feed the belly and flame the pudding. Listen for the sound of wolves retreating. Watch the late dawning of the unconquered sun. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, some really nice folklore in there as well. As I say, I'm a real fanatic for folklore. So well done, Ruth. Really enjoyed that set. Okay, now our next reader is Martin Stepak. Now Martin has written 5 books of poetry and 6 on mindfulness, and which he teaches when he's not being forgetful. Mindfulness, never mind. He has a book on his father's life awaiting publication with Fleming Publications, and is working on one of his family businesses experiences. He has written over 1,000 poems, which he hopes to publish in the coming years. Not before me. I mean, I don't. There's too many in that kind of equation. 1,000 would overwhelm, how many I've written. So just hold your horses, really. Martin says, writing poems is a process through which I try to understand life, how to live it and how not, which is real and what is not. Therefore, he is under no illusions. Martin Stepak.
Thanks very much, Mark, and a pleasure to be here, and beautiful, beautiful poems and stories so far. I'm only going to do one poem. It was meant to be an upbeat, cheery, let's all have a great Christmas, nostalgic look. And as is the way with poetry and writing, as you know, you don't get the choice. It turns into whatever it turns into. So this ended up being a more nostalgic, sad look back. So I had to change the title from We Had Such Lovely Christmases to Lament for Christmas Past. So here we go. We had such lovely Christmases, the 10 of us, fighting over which comic annual was whose, swapping gifts so carefully chosen by Mum. I was always up by 5, frantically waiting for the go-ahead when Mum finally got up, bursting into the big room where 10 piles of presents lay, one for each of our anarchist wains. 10, now 8. The infant child in the manger, Mother Mary's arms, his swaddled life eventually slips away. My father's broken youth, such pain, I can know it now and feel. You poor shattered boy. And Mum therefore became the angel who held it together for all 12 of us. 12, now 8. Kids then. Now what on this blessed day? It is such a blessed day, this beautiful day, a day of love and joy and hope and snow, though it never snows at Christmas. And though it never snows, I know the snow ghost that is my lost brother. Snows down in me like a memory from days when I pulled him on his sledge down the gently sloping hill of our younger, innocent years. The snow has stopped, David. The snow has stopped, Maria. Dad, look. The snow has stopped. Mum, can you make it snow again? Make it 1966 again? Just for a wee while? For the 12 of us? One more time, Mum? Thank you.
Yeah, a powerful poem there, Martin. Thank you very much for that. It's very useful to be reminded that not everything is as you would want it at Christmas, but you know, we have to remember the bitter and the sweet. So that's really very important. And I love the denouement to the poem. Well done, Martin. Okay, I'm now looking at, this is the last person in my particular emceeing bit, from what I can see, and that's a curiously named Spike Monroe, which I presume is really Richard Monroe pretending to be somebody else. I hope it is, because otherwise I've got a real problem with my announcement. So Spike is a former drama teacher from Edinburgh who moved to Istanbul to teach English in dramatic fashion. When he came back to Scotland, he joined the Heretics. But you're not part of my group. I mean, that surprises me. You've joined the Heretics, but you're not part of my group. Oh. Soon he was writing and performing all over the place in bars, clubs, parties, outdoor events, and even in the Scottish Parliament. Well, most of them perform in the Scottish Parliament, it has to be said. He has just published his first book, Selected Poems of Spike Monroe, published by Rhymer. He's also given me the URL, but I have absolutely no intention of reading out the URL. So, you know, if you want Spike, you can post it on the message board, and then people will know where to go to get your book. And he has just published his first book, Selected Poems. Spike Monroe, please take the microphone. You notice he has that, the book in his hand. You notice that? Yeah. Advertising.
The first poem, When Kids Steal out the Farmer's Field, it's called Tatties. Maggie kept shooty as it was getting dark. We dreeped the wa into the tatty field. We weren't there for the howkin that day, but for the chorian. At least a 4 pit of tatties atween us under our jumpers, but the eagle-eyed farmer spotted us. We legged it up and out the wall, but he galloped the field like a raging bull and caught up with us. Oh no! He kent me and Maggie fine. We'd been howking his tatties the year afore. We got dragged with the scruff of our necks, over the field, through the gate, and back up to the big hoose. The farmer's wife wasn't pleased. She called me a scruffy wee toad. You twa torags, you live just down the road. Have you nae shame, the pair of you? Just yous wait till yous get hame. The farmer gave me suck a look. I wanted to crawl under the table. Maggie stood quivering, looking down at her feet. He picked up the phone and called the police. We were took away home in a big black police van with a horrible warning. You twa'll end up in jail. My dad was pure raging. You thieving wee bugger. You were never brung up like that, like them tea leaves upstairs. The Polish just both shook their heads and left. Maggie whimpered and sniffed. I'll never do that again. My lip quivered. Ma, it was just for the soup. Oh, we ken your heart's in the right place. I've got a pile of tatties in the press. Just didn't go chorying again. And I got a big hug. Now, get to your bed. I'll give you soup, so I will. So that's my tatties. And now, page 68, where are we? I suppose this is influenced by a wee bit by Irvine Welsh. This is the last bus. He took the 19 bus to Pilton, met Big Eddie at the station. They were both in leather jackets for a night of stimulation. They headed off together to the fabled Purney Star, planked their coinage on the counter and knocked back a dozen jars. They were booted to the Purney, pished and gagging for a laugh, ripped the wipers off a motor, gnashed back to Eddie's gaff. Joe swigged a slug of Pilton pooch, spiked with methadone, and watched Glaikit as Big Eddie chored his cash and mobile phone. Joe traipsed along the ferry road. 'Twas dark and pissing doon, leaving Eddie stoned and out his head as he headed back to town. The bed had no been slept in. Bird was nowhere to be seen. She'd gone back to her auntie's, Pokey Flat in Parsons Green. In a douam, he craves a fix, but this time he's OD'd, and his Jill is sitting next to him with a bairn upon her knees. He hasn't paid his debts all year, so the pusher calls his crew, "Go on, give the edge of fright, boys," and you ken what to do. The gangsters for the Purney dragged him right up Arthur's seat, tack a chainsaw to his body, cut him into lumps of meat. He wakes up in the morning, can't he mind where he's been? The pusher, the bairn and chainsaw are just fiction in his dream. He's finished with Big Eddie. Christ, that man's such a joke. His move's like a junkie's carpet. All that stuff just makes him bulk. Took him 2 days to recover. He was chucked out of his flat. So he's back home with his mother. Ah, well, that's the end of that. Oh.
Thank you, Spike. Yes, a nice, comfortable Christmas poem there for us.
Beautiful.
Yes, beautiful, yes. Your first poem, you know, it's a good thing you weren't mousy, because either the farmer's wife would have been after you with a carving knife. Yeah, okay. I'll leave it there. And I am now finishing as your MC. So we're going to have a break, I think, for another 3 minutes, because we've run over time. And the next MC is going to be MT Taylor. So I'll shut my mouth, let you have 3 minutes of gibbering to each other, and then MT will take it further forward. Thank you very much, everybody.
Just before you go, Mark, I just would like to say thank you so much. Your wonderful meanderings in between each reader were just a joy to hear. We've missed you. Thank you so much.
jingle bells, jingle all the way.
Thank you, Mark. That lets me know that I am indeed unmuted. Thank you. Thanks so much for comparing that so wonderfully. And actually, not thank you, because I've got to feel so much like a damp squib after that. But thank you so much. That was wonderful. Very, very warm, hospitable welcome to all the readers in the last section. Thank you. Is everybody ready to go? Can I see some hands? Somebody say, yeah, if they're happy. Right, I'm about to start then. Okay, this section begins with a very well-kent poet in Scotland. It's Stuart Patterson. Are you there, Stuart? I think I saw a message from you earlier, so I assume you are. Stuart's new book of illustrated Scots poems for kids, A Squatter of Bairn Rhymes, published by Tippermuir Books, has received glowing reviews on BBC Radio Scotland, and I heard it myself. It was on Janice Forsyth's show, and it was absolutely wonderful. And the BBC Radio Ulster. It's currently number 6 in Amazon UK's top 10 young adult poetry books chart. Wheen, new and collected Scots poems, will be published by Chapman in 2021, which is only a couple of weeks away. Recipient of many awards, he's the author of several collections and a former BBC Scotland poet in residence. Lately, Stuart has been reminding us of the imminent daft days of Christmas, as celebrated by Robert Ferguson, and now by Stuart on Twitter and elsewhere. So if you're ready to go, Stuart, we'll look forward to what you have for us this afternoon.
Thanks very much, NT. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you clear as a bell.
Juliette's putting her thumbs up, must be all right. Thank you very much. Thanks for mentioning the 12 days, Robert Ferguson, the daft days, but no chucking in the obvious word little. Glad there wasn't any advertising going on there. Thanks, everybody. And hello, everybody. And thanks for asking me along to the Federation Knees Up, Get Together, whatever. I'll read you a couple of poems, seeing as I'm here. And it was really interesting. Listening to the other stuff has been great. But because I heard Spike, as in Richard Monroe, as he's poshly known in Glasgow, read out a poem about tatties, I thought I would read out my poem, which I wrote a couple of years ago about tatties. People of a certain age might remember the tatty howkin. And the tatty howkin was no joke. It was sore going for no very much money. So this is called Howkin, and it's in Scots. Fae sile to bile, fae fry to bake, fae hon to lawn, to truck to box, to ship to shop to plate, ye tap the lot, trounce neeps and battered cabbage, kale, carrots, onions, beets, king and queen o' all the crops, muck pust potentate, our lady o' the pale carbohydrates, tuberous muse o' nations, Makar o' empires, breaker o' backs. Birrel and how can fling them in the basket, streach and bend and how can fling and bend and howk 1,000 times and then again, 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 again. Each day a year it felt to hand and bane and spine, thin shilpit for your bending hour. Lang shifts that stretched fae dawn to dusk, each chittering called October. But truth to tell, ye dinna gie resistance, scrub up wheel, and only seekened by the lang roads, lorries, boats, the muckle distance mapped out by you all round the globe. You're guy compliant, louse guy easy. You're nae tarty, flirty, flimsy, dodo, sugly fruit. You're hard, you're tough, the very stuff of life, whose roots go far by Clarton mud and into nearby every yin of us who howk ye, spud. So that was my poem about the tatty howkin, which I remember vaguely and clartily for a long time back. The next poem I'd like to read is quite a new one, I suppose. And seeing as this is the Federation of Writers Scotland, but there's a lot of you in Glasgow, I know. I'd like to read out this poem, which I think is appropriate for now and the situation we're in the COVIDian world, if you like. And this poem has just been published in About God's Story Thursday, which comes out once a year for Limerick Council over in Ireland. So I was really happy that they published this poem and included it this year. And it kind of sums up, really, being for Ayrshire as I am originally, what I think of Glasgow and what Glasgow means to me. I've written it for my partner, Joan. Great spires and steeples saw the view, the skyline, the sky itself in two. Down here, where ceaseless waves of crowd breenge ever onward, sure, unbowed, by painfully predestined shores of ending, eyes are never fixed on what in God's name's coming next. We idling dreamers, dazed to slow, who bumble and apologise for daring to regard such skies, and should say what we are, but worry, mutter, stumble, mumble, sorry, can't help but get in the way of rushing humdrum every day. Eyes drawn to towering aboves, we're unconcerned with less than love, with gatherings of more than two, with lines that don't begin with you. So that was my poem, Glasgow, about Glasgow, in Glasgow, and particularly for somebody from that area. I'll finish off by reading one which I suppose is seasonal, because it's about Christmas and not about COVID. But I wrote this one 2 or 3 years ago, and it was broadcast on BBC Scotland, and as part of the campaign to make people aware of loneliness at Christmas. And I think even now, especially now, even though there's a 3 household thing being brought in and various rules relaxed, I think it's still very, very much the case now that we need to remember those who are on their Todd at this time of year. So I wrote this poem called Bright. My dad died 11 years ago. My mum's still in the go. Her name's Mima. She's 91. And so I wrote this poem for my parents. It's called Bright. And it's for my mum, really. It's addressed to my mum, Mima. You're building another Christmas for one, decorating the presents with sparkly lights and glitter. A long line of cards hung over the mantelpiece, none from Barclay. This is your grotto of the now, aflame defiantly, yet still the old eyes missed at each card opened, addressed to one name only, Mima, white space replacing his. He was the ghost of most Christmases past, Marley in the corner, grumpy, moaning how early it was, presents opened last, rolling fags, drinking coffee, alone in his own slowly wakening world, bagging the paper, socks, chalks, hankies, baffies, piled beneath his chair, soon tired of trying, flagging, giving in to sleep for just a wee while. I know he was happy in his own grudged Cumnock way, this being never more clear than when he declared it over, had judged, that'll be it, bye for another year. Then suddenly it was, for all the years after, that great, unbearable divide. I see you in light, you who are still here, ablaze in the ever-shortening nights. Thank you very much for listening. Cheers.
That was absolutely magical, Stuart. And I think you got one of my favourite words in the first one, sugally. I love it. And brecker backs. I don't know if you remember the Tate. How can you used to get days off school if you were doing that? So it had a good side, you know, wee bit pocket money. Okay, thanks again, Stuart. Look forward to seeing you again. And what was the book you had in your hand there? We just missed it.
Oh, it's an annual anthology. It's into its 43rd version, 43rd issue. The Story Thursday book, it's issued every year for Limerick County Council, Limerick Arts Council over in Ireland. So it's a really, really cracking book for poems for everybody all over. Stony Thursday, it's well worth getting. It's a great book.
Yeah, and maybe think folk have them submitting to it as well.
And submitting to it, absolutely, aye.
Thanks so much. Okay, right. My next person I have is Nancy Lippeldingram. Nancy, that's great. Nancy is an American professional artist working in the fields of film, television, radio, and theatre and performance poetry. Her journey writing poetry began with the Word Factory and has continued with the collective Women with Fierce Words. Both of those are represented by folks watching today. She has performed in many festivals, including The Hidden Door and Electric Fields. She likes to work with multi-mediums to present work and is inspired by current events, ecology, and observation of human interaction with society. She has performed regularly on both sides of the Atlantic and is currently based in the UK. Okay, Nancy, all yours now.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes?
Indeed.
Okay. Right. Well, since this is Tinsel Tales and Christmas time, I'm going to do something a little bit different than I normally do. So here we go. Come on over here and sit next to me. Come on over here right next to me. Let me tell you a story about things long ago. Blood is thicker than water, so the saying goes. When I was young, just like you, I thought the world was bigger than it really is. I have seen many things, good and bad, happy and sad, beautiful and cruel. You will travel far and see many things, but remember where you started, where you are from. The more you know, the smaller the world will become, and the bigger your heart will be. Remember, you are part of the whole, no better and no smaller. Be courageous, confident, not arrogant. And remember, kindness goes a long way. She roars. She is a dinosaur. She is a carnivore or an omnivore. She is fierce. She is quiet. She is still. She can move quickly. She can move slowly. She is determined. She has the appetite, attitude, character, desire. One thing is clear. She can roar. Things. This is something that I wrote when I was in the Canary Islands, but I think it's relevant for a Christmassy kind of theme. 3 stars align. 3 stars align under a blanket of light pollution, stark and sturgent, fighting for the strongest. Hold my hand above my eyes, shielding the light, only subdues a bit. It is strident and obtrusive. How long will this bright, white light shine? I turn my head, cover and shield my sight. I can see 3 stars aligned. This is something about an observational piece. Here it is. Wave of glitter, spirals and twists, a swarm of silver entwines, energizing with the wind, becoming something bigger than itself, moving with the gusts, transcendental, meditational pull. Well, Christmas is about love, so this is my little piece on love. Love is like a suitcase, open, traveled, battered, exchanged, returned, lost, found, repaired, closed, zipped, full, empty, passing through, locked. I'd like to read one more. Actually, I'd like to read two short ones. This one is about the refugees that I feel strongly with. My son works with musicians in exile, which are refugees and asylum seekers that have come to Glasgow. But quite often it's really difficult. I mean, I know what it's like coming and moving to a new place, and even though you speak the same language, the words can mean something completely different, and you can be completely misunderstood, and you can feel like this, trapped in a foreign world. Words don't mean the same. Language is perverse and demented, changed, misunderstood. It's a time continuum, disenchanted, discourse denied, even morphed into something else, twisted back on itself into an underworld unique to itself, diverse of all that is known, driven to an unknown place, deeper and darker than anything previously seen or understood. So I'd like to end on a nice positive. And someone asked me the question, what is love, for a musician was doing some things about this, and was going to write a piece of music. So this is what I came up with. What is love? Love is like a tribe. Let's support each other and build each other up. We all have burdens and obstacles that hinder us, hold us back from what we want to achieve. Some of our goals will never be realized, but that shouldn't blind us to the love that we have around us. We all have different paths, different meals on our plate to be consumed, tried, and tasted. Some we like, others we don't. But that isn't what matters. What matters is that we tried. We are a tribe. Let's hold each other up to the stars and back. Without love, nothing is real. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nancy. That was a treat. It really was. And it's lovely to hear the different, Stuart Scott's thing, and then hear your lovely dulcet tones as well. And it was very powerful stuff, as Leslie said in the chat, very sassy poems, some of them. And thank you again. And the next person I'm going to ask to read is Lindsay Oliver. Lindsay began writing poetry 7 years ago when she took a free writing course at the local community centre and fell in love with creative writing. Her poems have been published online in the print journal Lallands, the Journal of Scots Language of the Scots Language Society, and now she's got Untitled here, but I don't know if that's the name of the poem. But anyway, and in 2 themed chapbooks from Drich and Hyperpress. So thanks very much, Lindsay. You had to get that to me in super quick time. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing what you're going to read today. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to start with a poem that's also inspired by Stop the Clocks, and it's because this has been a year of tremendous loss of life. Why stop the clocks? Why stop the clocks when time itself stands dead? Far better halt the fallow lie of sunlight, cull all green, staunch the bright pulsing flow of red. Why baffle the dog with a juicy bone to stay his bark? Muzzle instead the boundless sky whose blues cannot compass this loss that hungers for the dark. Why muffle the drum? Mute you now the too bright brass that holds him from me and sears my grief in burnished oak. Unpaw my boy, lay him on the grass. Why favour doves' white necks with the privacy of crape? Hang my heart with shades of black relief, wreath my eyes, blind their din, noose black bows round my frigid nape. Why give comfort to another's hand? Grant my grasp black cotton gloves to hide from sight my unrequited fists, forever wanting his returning clasp. Why allot love to span of time? Love knows no lack, no stop, no start, no fix, no fault, no blight. Love finds no rest, no end. Unshroud them now. We want them back. Okay, so my second poem is about what I did during lockdown. And I'm quite disabled and I'm losing the use of my left hand and I'm left-handed. And so this means I couldn't draw anymore. So when the 100 Days project came up, where you do you do one thing for 100 days, I decided to try drawing with my right hand. And this is what happened. Wrong-handed, weak, tired, lockdown mired, count the cost, left hand lost, paints, pens, all dried out, hearts, tears, all cried out, neighbours caring, me despairing, nothing doing, just angry stewing, no more knitting, just vacant sitting. 100 days, 100 days. My right hand works, my right hand plays, makes a mark, has a lark, draws a face, a cat, a hand, beavers, bears, dragons, hares, hurdlers, sprinters, owls, fish, old photographs, elephant, flowers, cubes, cones, spheres, domes, a fox, a mouse, newts, bees, my best pal's dog, fanciful fish, a pig, a goose, a mallard duck, magpie, snails. I've got it back, like a gift, a sudden shift. I can draw again. Okay, this next poem is inspired by me reading the guidance on adapting buildings to make them more accessible within a conservation zone. And after reading it, I decided I'd have much more chance of getting into the building if I was dead, buried, and fossilized. Make me worthy. Blind me. Gouge the eyes from my face. Scalp me. Hack the hair from my head. Skin me. Split me open with a bright spay blade. Gut me. Hurl my entrails on the ground. Butcher me. Hang my substance in the sun. Crush me. Grind me into powder, into dust. Choke me. Smother me in lime. Drown me. Stifle me in water. Beat me. Make of me a mortar. Hair, skin, powder, bone. Entomb me. Sink me in the dirt. Exhume me. Harrow me with clay. Throw me. Strike me into bricks. Fire me. Forge me in a furnace. Reclaim me. Build of me a wall. Render me. Smooth me onto stone. Sinew, bile, teeth, gall. Only then will I be worthy. Only then will I atone. And I've got one final short poem, and it sums up, I wrote it before lockdown, before the pandemic, but it sums up my feelings about the current crop of world leaders. The devil slakes his thirst. The devil dons his mask and casts our children from the land with promises purloined from the nightmares of the dead. The devil sheds his skin, walks the dark sequestered streets as we worship and adore his glory all unbound. The devil stakes his claim to pitch his shadow on the sea while we collect his rent from the safety of the shore. The devil takes his due with an unforgiving hand, more practiced than restrained, and lays his burden down. Thank you very much for letting me read.
Honestly, Lindsay, that just took my breath away. And the one you were reading about how to do away with bits of you, you know, soap me in limestone, all I could think is she's indestructible. She's absolutely, there's nothing you can do. I loved it. And all I just felt it was like a whole load of beautiful stuff. I love the idea too that when you practiced writing with your drawing with your right hand, you said, I've got it back, a gift. That you'd look on something that was gone but recovered as a gift. I thought it's a beautiful thought. Thank you so much. Worth thinking about a while. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to Shelly Mcconaughey. I know, Shelly, you're there because you've got a very gorgeous hat on somewhere. So here's something about Shelly. Shelly's, after suppressing her whimsical feelings in teenage diaries, Shelly decided to let it all out by performing poetry. In 2017, she made the Queensland Poetry Slam state titles. Since then, she's been artsy-fartsying about, trying to find her passion and performing comedy in Glasgow. Her Facebook page is Shell MC, and this is a good one, Shelly, honestly. So she's asking you, please give her a new age form of applause, a like and a follow. Okay, Shelly, you go for it.
Pardon, I'm ready. The best and worst, slightly awkward Christmas gift. And I'm just trying to make sure I can see myself. Wonderful. Okay, not much money, saved what I could. His family had a swimming pool. Didn't know what to buy, last minute panic. Not many ideas, tried my best. Thought, I'll get our faces on a mug. Him, as a 3-year-old dressed as a firefighter. Me, as a ballerina at 2. We had hopes and dreams. He went to the body shop. God, he had such good taste for a 16-year-old. Me, I went to a random printing shop that offered pictures on mugs at discount prices. They helped me put the photos side by side. He bought me sea mist perfume, gift wrapped for an extra $2. How fancy. Me, I bought him a cup. We broke up. I didn't know what would happen to the cup. We still went to the school formal together. It was all good. We were just down the road from each other in slightly different neighborhoods. 15 years later, drinking in a share house in Brisbane one night, me, remember the cup I gave you? How embarrassing. Cue. Laughter. Him. I still have it. That was the best present I ever got. That's it. Thank you.
Is that all you're going to do, Shelly?
That's all I'm going to do. I started to write some Love Actually haikus, but I thought nothing can be better than the introduction to Love Actually, where it talks about arriving in Heathrow, and yeah, so short and brief. I'm packing at the moment as I'm going back to Australia soon. So thanks so much for having me.
No, it was lovely to hear you. Thanks so much for coming and doing that one. Wonderful drama there. Okay. Now, the next person that's coming up is somebody without whom Tinsel Tales would just be very drab and dreich. It's Gayle Smith. So if you're there, Gayle. Gayle has been active in the Scottish poetry and spoken word scene since 1893 and is an original, 1993, and is an original member of the Federation. She co-hosts the long-running Words and Music event with her close friend Jen Hughes, who she persuaded to join our ranks earlier this year. She is also a woman with fierce words and is fiercely proud of her connection with other voices spoken word cabaret people, for whom she has performed at the Edinburgh Fringe. You'll mention that you're a staunch Celtic supporter as well, Gayle, but never mind. Okay. It's been published in a number of anthologies, including Mind the Time, for which we really must thank Jim Mackintosh, who's going to come along later, the Best of 10 Read, and our own upcoming collection, To Whom It May Concern, which were poems written to commemorate the declaration of our Broth. Gayle, I'm looking forward to what you have for us today. I know it'll be a treat.
Thanks a lot, Mary Triz, and it's great to see everyone, and especially my good friends Nancy, Leslie, and Juliette. I'll talk to you a lot later. The first poem I'm going to do two, is to remind us of the value of friendship and also the sadness of loss, because this year a lot of people have had real heartbreak in our lives, but for me that came in the August of 2019 when I lost one of my best friends, and it's in his memory. I deliberately decided to read this when you said it might be published, Mary Fred. So this is for Steve Allen, and it's called Jester. Long before I knew him, my flatmate was at school with my friend. On hearing of his death, she recalled the story from their younger years when they performed in a show. The big top was the theme. She was cast as the announcer who had to tell the public the circus is coming to town. He played the part of the clown, the funny man from an early age. I knew him from a different stage, where his poems and stories would captivate all who heard. Our sides would be sore with laughter at the tales he told, as he used comedy to entertain and make us think of the messages contained in his words. His deadpan delivery had the concerns he didn't talk about and retain. He wanted to make people smile and did more often than he knew. He was always the likeable jester when holding court. Off stage, we shared some private moments. Well, you do when you've known a friend for more than 20 years. He understood my fears better than I did his. A man of generous spirit, he gave his time to others who wished we'd returned the favour, or had been able to help him in some way. His loss was a hard one to take. Sometimes costumes are worn as disguise to hide the hurt from others. The clown dare not uncover wounds too deep to heal. But as the darkness fell, it revealed the pain he endured. And on the day of his funeral, we read his final words and thought of a friend we loved as we mourned the loss of the man who wore the clown mask to hide the tears he kept behind the smile. We love and miss you, Stevie, and Christmas is not quite the same without your presence. But that was the sad one that reflects on that personal loss there. But this one is something completely different. In fact, it's probably something completely ludicrous, and most of you have heard it before. It's called Christmas Lies, subtitle, Just What I've Always Wanted. That DVD you got me, you know the one I mean, it really was so perfect for my exercise routine. Like I need that, I want to scream, but till with guilt my tongue gets haunted. So I indulge in a Christmas lie. It's just what I've always wanted. You bought my dad a home brew kit that will drive you round the twist, as every day from now till May he'll end up getting pissed. So I put on my best fake smile, though my nose has become disjointed, as once again I tell you all, it's just what I've always wanted. You bought our Melda Sis from hell some calendars by mistake, but they had to be the Chippendales and Justin Timberlake. David got a laptop. I'm really disappointed, but yet again, I'll let you know, it's just what I've always wanted. And as for all the other gifts I found beneath the tree, I've not received a single one, which really pleases me. Grandma's cardigan looks too old, Milltop is way too tight. It's my annual family nightmare, no one ever gets it right. Now I know you'll say you meant well, and I don't doubt your intentions, but why are the simple things in life beyond your comprehension? On Boxing Day, you'll vegetate with turkey and mince pies, but I'll grab the receipts and I'll run to the sales. There'll be no more Christmas lies. Thanks, everybody. Have a fantastic Christmas and a happy and successful 2021 when we're all vaxxed up to the hill and out enjoying days like these in the way that we should be. Thanks.
Gayle, thanks so much. Two very contrasting poems, that how you commemorate somebody you love, and you'll always miss them every Christmas it comes round. So that was very moving. And that's one of my favourites, just what I always wanted.
Well, I knew I had to read that one because it wouldn't be Christmas if I didn't. So come on.
Exactly, it's your Christmas poem and I feel your pain. Thank you so very much. That was brilliant. Okay, now here's one of my very, very favourite writers in Scotland these days, Aileen Valentine. Aileen is an award-winning journalist and poet. Her first poetry collection, Taking Flight, published by Luath Press, explores flight in all its aspects, but it commemorates the Lockerbie disaster in the voices of Lockerbie residents. Reviewing Taking Flight, John Glenday said, Aileen Valentine has a rare and natural gift for language. So true. Her narratives tell us things we really need to know. Now, Aileen will be reading at Stanza International Poetry Festival next year on March 13th. And after this event, I'll be sending you all the little short biographies that you gave me to do this event, so you can read about that. And the link to that event that Aileen will be at Stanza is on that document. So for now, let's hand over to you, Aileen.
Thanks very much, Marie-Therese. Can you hear me okay?
Very clearly.
Marvellous. I wanted to read a few poems from the series on Lockerbie in the book Taking Flight. It's one of these things, of course, that happened, it seems to come back around about this time of year every time. Today, partly because there's been another suspect that is apparently going to be extradited from Libya and will stand trial, we are told. But also just because of the effects on a town and of the connections that are still going on now. I was the staff medical correspondent on The Guardian in the London office when it happened. And as reporters do, when these things happen, I tried to find out what was going on, like everybody else in the office. And I found myself talking on what must have been a very early mobile phone to a rescue worker in the cockpit. And I wrote down what he said, and of course we didn't use it because we had no idea whether the relatives had been informed at that time. But it's something that stayed with me. And when I came to write poetry much, much later, I wondered if there was something that poetry could do that journalism couldn't. And I started to research these poems and that they've been recently published. I just wanted to read you one or two. Lockerbie, Pan Am Flight 103, rescue worker. He can see them where he found them, lit by the beam of the torch on his forehead, untouched, it seemed, by the fall. He hoped they had slept, but knew they had not. Those two young women he found in the dark field that December night, still strapped to their plane seats, their arms tight around each other, their fingers crossed. And this next one is in the voice of Bunty Galloway. It's called The Boy Who Fell from the Sky. I was watching This Is Your Life, Harry Corbett. It had just started. Then I heard it. My whole house shook like an earthquake. I went out to the front to get away from it. He was just lying there at the bottom of my steps, a wee laddie in brown socks and blue trousers. At first I thought he was just sleeping, so I put a lamb's wool blanket around him. He was there for day after day. Nobody came to tuck him awa. There were that many of them. That many, a wee laddie that fell from the sky. The officers said they thought they could maybe learn something from the ways my boy landed. It was that call for the laddie. I saw him every day. In the end, I said to them, my boy's still there. You've got to get my boy lifted. And they came that night and they moved him. And Christmas came and Christmas went. But I never found out the name of my boy. And because this was effectively a crime, inevitably, some of the bodies that fell from the sky, as in the case of Bunty Galloway, lay untouched for a few days. Because as she said, maybe they could find out something from the ways my boy landed. And particularly the women of Lockerbie decided that as the possessions were left behind, and were just stacked up in a wooden shed somewhere. For many years, they decided to try and return them to the loved ones and the relatives. And it took up to 7 years in some cases. This poem's called Toothpaste. It was the toothpaste that nearly defeated them. It was there in each suitcase. Each tube had exploded over every shirt and blouse they tried to mend. But one washed, one ironed, and one folded, until each trace of the blast of blood and of fuel was removed. And at last, after 7 years of waiting, the clothes of each son, of each daughter, were returned to each mother, to each father. And the unread pages of a journal of a girl who lived to 20 were unfolded leaf by leaf, ironed one by one, her words returned, clean and washed in their pages. And the last one that I want to read to you from the series is in fact the last poem, and it kind of brings us up to date. Because of course, Robert Mueller, whom we all know from his inquiries into Donald Trump, was in fact the investigator for many years, and he saw what these women in Lockerbie were doing, and it had an effect on him. And the policy about what happens to the possessions of victims of terrorism has now changed. Terrorism, changing the playbook. FBI Victim Services Division, Washington, DC. In Charleston in 2015, the FBI found and returned the clothes and the Bibles to the families, to the loved ones of 9 Black Americans slaughtered as they prayed. At 9/11 in New York, when the towers fell, in Bali, in Paris, at the Boston Marathon, at the Pulse nightclub shooting, Orlando, the relatives and loved ones were presented with their belongings, washed clean of dirt and blood by the FBI, 72 of them in a unit in Washington, DC, set up by Robert Mueller after seeing the shredded clothes and possessions soaked with blood, dirt, and aviation fuel piled in a wooden shed in Lockerbie, where he saw how the women of the town cleaned them, folded them in tissue, a new cloth wrapper, paired them with handwritten names, and sent them home.
Thanks so very much, Aileen. And I don't know if when we've been speaking in the past, I've said, I mean, I knew very well one of the families that perished at Lockerbie. They were the house that was a big crater, you know, in the middle, and their remains were never discovered. To bring that just the journalism dealing with the main issue, but then to have the personal witness of people who have survived, it's wonderful. And thank you so very much again. Lewis Prest have that one, and I'm just getting the taking flight. Just make sure I get it right.
Thanks, Marie-Therese. That's really kind of you. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, now I'm going to have Giovanna McKenna. Giovanna, if you're there. So after lengthy careers as an actor, far too young to have had a lengthy career as an actor and as a journalist, Giovanna was tasked to write a poem and found she was full of them. She is now a published and commissioned poet. You can find her words in Wet Grain, Visual Verse, Dear Damsel, and Lapidus Scotland. She is currently working with art project, the Museum of Loss and Renewal, on her first publication. Okay, Giovanna, all yours now.
Thanks very much. Hi, everyone. I've just enjoyed this so much. It's lovely to be here. Thank you. My first poem is a wee look at the fragility of magic, which of course this season should be full of, but how difficult it is to retain that in this modern age. It's called The Magician. He stands on the promenade, all wind-blown and salted edges, his bones cloaked in a tatty velvet coat of crimson. It glows against the ocean's grey. Steely curls set a faded fedora listing, while eyes sharp as shattered glass search for a child's gaze to snare and tether tight. Chin high, he throws his voice out, up to the gull's ratchet cries, and it returns, a mixed up melody of sparkle and want. A lone head turns in time to catch his hoarse notes, a girl with weary eyes. She is drawn to those familiar tones of need and long neglect. Together, they stand in silence. He is surprised by her attention. She waits fiercely before succumbing to his tarnished splendor. The world retreats as she watches old fingers flick soft-edged cards into sea air. Briefly lost, they are found again behind her studded ear. His artistry fades upon viewing. She is distracted by the robotic ping in her palm's grip. The magic evaporates, and he finds himself alone, the gulls dancing overhead. Thank you. This time of year always makes me think of people who aren't here. So these next two short poems are, I suppose, on the theme of remembrance, as a lot of you have dipped into today. So the first one's called Clematis. You gifted me clematis, two fragile plants with twisting citrus leaves, their youthful growth nestled in my garden, an inverse marker of your own decline. Each morning, before my hospice trip, I'd bend to each and tease apart their willful twists, attempt to guide their hectic growth with care and food and nurture. They danced around their slim supports, flaunting sure potential, flashing inches of intricately twined advances into eyes still dazzled by your shrinking form. Returning from my final visit, I found an unexpected September bloom. Its purple striped fingers blazed a silent welcome. I briefly caught your perfume on the air. Thank you. This one is called Silence. Of all the things I knew I'd lost, your voice surprised me. I was too busy mourning into the spaces you left. I forgot my ears were empty. There was so much in your speech, and then it all was gone. No longer the soft lilt at the end of a crackled line, that deep geyser of a laugh washing away doubts and confusions, your rare flint-edged rumble in the face of misdemeanors. For all I chased my memories, I did not stop until I knew there was no more to hear from you. Thank you. This last poem is it's about finding ourselves here in these cold months after this long, difficult year. It's called Winter. Outside my door is rain and winds that shout and swagger. The ground is giving up its firmness, relenting into spongy sulks, slopping puddles down in once true places. The trees are shivering, the last of their leaves discarded, exposing a forest of naked limbs, coating the extravagance of pavements with mulched ice. The sun has also turned its back. It comes in late to work and slinks off early. Children stumble home in a fearful gloom. Inside, I have harvested blankets, built nests of cushions, and made my small room glow with firelight as I long for others' arms to warm me through these limping months. Thanks so much, everyone.
These limping months. Anna, that's just, I mean, there's phrases throughout from she waited fiercely, and I mean, just your lovely your lovely use of language is just gorgeous. Thank you so much. A wonderful set. And I'll just remind everybody, the Museum of Loss and Renewal is where you'll find Giovanna's stuff soon. Okay, now Jeff Kemp. Jeff lives in East Lothian. His most recent project was a collaborative exhibition at Ballad in Edinburgh with art and poetry. A pamphlet, a plagiarisation of the dire year, was produced for this, and it's still available. Okay, Jeff, over to you now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've got a couple of short poems from that very pamphlet and a couple of shorter poems. The first one is, well, I'd introduce it as a haiku, but with an audience like this, I know people will be counting and saying that doesn't fit 575 pattern at all. So I shall just say here's a 17-syllable poem. It's called Family Stress. Fiercer sibling jealousy has no known creature than COVID-18. So that's the first poem. It was supposed to be funny. The second poem, the provisional first line of the second poem was, hey, do you know about that village? I think it was somewhere in England, and it was in the 17th, unless it was the 14th century, and it cut itself off from the rest of the world. That was, I thought that was a line that could be improved on. So I threw that at Mr. Google, and Mr. Google came back with EYM, spelled E-Y-A-M. And so this is my poem called EYM, 1665. Greater love has no man, hath no woman, than to see their village as an island, its boundary stones a shore containing all thoughts of escape. Stay, close the door, wait, face the plague, wait, a month, a year. 1666 arrives stinking like the apocalypse, as 4 out of 5 die. Unless it was 30%, precision fades with age, but their decision not to infect others is brutally clear. As courageous as now seemingly arcane while we strain to reach oversupplies in the herd impunity of supermarket aisles. So that was written in April, just as the first wave was beginning to take effect. A second poem, which it has 28 syllables in it, but an alternative fact is that it's got 17 syllables, and an alternative fact is that it's a haiku, which may give you some clue as to what the subject is. We've already had one poem about Donald, and I think he is a tremendous genius of tremendosity, because who else could have made COVID look like good news this year, really? Donald today refuted rumours that he is mortal. A toupee is forever, he said, so I'm well covered. So that's my tribute to the man. And I'll finish with another, this is a shortish poem. It is also Christmas, so here's a poem about, well, it's about pre-Christmas really, since the actual events of Christmas probably happened not exactly 2020 years ago, but it's about the first Christmas. This is called Mary's Song. There were villages on ridges where every day the wind blew hot, then cold each night. The grit scoured your face. There were hamlets scattered over sparse plains where even the children kept silent. Veiled glances willed you away. There were clamorous towns, garrulous with sounds that echoed each other like hawkers' mirrored smiles. I never looked round, but I never forgot. You don't, when fragrant images like fragmented shavings of wood on a workshop floor are all you have to guess at what's to come. I hoarded chants, smells, sights, sounds, scents while sliding between leaving and arrival. They became pungent as a baby's cry, startling as strangers arriving at a birth, them and us, then and now, buffeted by doubts, cold and fear, carrying a gift beyond the path, carrying the path within. Thank you.
Thanks so very much, Jeff. That was fantastic. And no, although I practice haiku myself, I'm not a fan of 575s. I don't think it's at all anything to do with. In fact, no, most of them were just written in one long line anyway. So there you go. Okay, thank you. Very, very good. And now our very last reader in this open mic session is Juliette Lee. Juliette is an executive coach, podcaster, and award-winning speaker for the leading chief executive organization, Vistage. Other executive organizations are available. A former chemical engineer with ICI, she spent 25 years in Teesside before returning to her native Scotland in 2013. She is a member of the Others Stanza group, Dovetails, and Women with Fierce Words. I know all of those groups. Each one of them absolutely wonderful. Well, Juliette, the stage is yours now. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie-Therese, and thank you everyone for waiting for the last spot. And I want to read a couple that I kindly have the permission from Jack Caradox. Will be published in Dreich magazine in March next year, so he's happy, he knows that these are being recorded. And the first one is called Uncle Sheamus. Uncle Sheamus wore three-piece suits, kept a litre of vodka by his bed, watched Death Wish on repeat, and lived on the 23rd floor in the Gorbals. He was a plasterer, and most nights got plastered himself. By 50, he needed more than a cast to hold his broken body after a lifetime of benders. At my wedding reception, he leant in close, and I watched as his cigar burnt a hole in my veil. Julie Hen, I can gee up the fags, but no the drink. Christmas, I went to his grave with my dad. I'll no be joining you yet, Sheamus. I held him as he wept. 9 months later, Uncle Sheamus came to me in a dream. Suit trousers, blue striped shirt, no waistcoat, no jacket. He was standing a short distance away, my dad beside him. Uncle Sheamus turned, asked if I understood. I nodded, buried my dad 6 weeks later. Bit of a lighter note on this one. This is a visceral one, this one. Sherbet Lemons. Clutching a white paper bag, you ran past St. Peter's graffitied walls. Your quarter of sherbet lemons could have been cola cubes, pear drops, sour plums, or aniseed twists. Crystallized and rough, they lacerate your tongue, but sherbet lemons pack a surprise. Sour and stringent, they shock your palate, but if you just keep sucking, a pinhole appears at one end and crackling sherbet blasts onto your tongue. Nothing is only bitter or only sweet. I'll finish with this. I wasn't going to do this, but this whole potato thing that's been a kind of theme. And I've forgotten I'd written this, and it reminded me I'd written it. So this is a kind of just a jokey, funny one, and I'll finish with this. A ballad to baked potatoes. My coat rustles and creaks like brown paper, shades and spots rugged film star looks. If you're good, you might savour me later, surrounded by an ocean of poetry books. Melted butter deep crossed through my belly, fluffy, steaming starched peaks, while perched on the settee in front of the telly, wondering if, in the latest soap opera, they ever meet. You could go all fancy, add camembert and cranberry, or Eastern with pulled goat and raisins. Fill a dessert gap with cinnamon and candy, splash out and go for 4 seasons. Bake me long and with care and you'll find time starved in a microwave oven won't do it for me. King Edward in a smoking jacket, I'm one of a kind. You need to slow down to set my flavour free. Thank you very much, everybody.
Terrific, Juliette. Honestly, thanks so very much. I think we're going to have a special potato tatty pretty edition of all this. Thanks so much. And sour plumes, my goodness, I remember they used to cut your tongue if you sucked, and yeah, thank you again. Juliette is the last person, but before I go, can I ask all of you who sent me those little autobiographies, they're absolutely wonderful. If you want me to add another couple of sentences for everybody to know about, I'll happily put them on before I send the document out. So you know the email address, it's the one you used before. So if you've got anything to add to your bio, I'm happy to add it there, any things that you've got coming up, any publications you want to talk about. Thank you all so very, very much. And thank you all the attendees, the people who came along just to watch and appreciate. I've been checking through who's all there, and the names, of course, are familiar to me. Thank you all. I'm going to say toodle pip just now. Tatty bye.
Thanks very much, Shelly. That was absolutely wonderful. We're running over time. I'm really sorry about that, but I don't know about everybody else, but I wouldn't miss a second of all these readings. They've been absolutely marvellous. Thank you. We're now going to have a 10-minute break. I hope everybody's okay with running on a bit longer, but it's nice to have a break in between. So I'll see you in 10 minutes' time. Well, thank you everybody who's contributed so far, but the Tinsel Tales is our big event of the year, and it's the highlight of today, the inauguration of the Scriever and the Makar for 2021. I'd like to say a little bit about the roles. The Scriever is a writer of prose nominated by our board members and previous Scrievers. In time, it will only be the Scrievers who do the nominations and the vote, but we're only on to our third one, so that will come in time. Gayle Smith wrote the description of the Makar and Scriever role that you would have seen during the countdown there, and I think it sums it up perfectly. So thank you for that, Gayle. The Makar is chosen by the previous Makars. What happens is they nominate and they vote, and it's a point system on first, second, and eventually a winner emerges. So you should be very proud of yourselves, Leela and Jim. I'd like now to pay tribute to our outgoing Scriever, Charlie Gracie. Charlie, a lot's happened since you, me and Finola broke bread in a lovely cafe in Stirling to discuss the plans for 2020. Flanders Moss, Dumfries, the Black Isle, Stirling and the Solway Firth were all places that we mentioned that we would consider going to, we could do things there. However, COVID put paid to that. But you rose to the challenge, initially with the 9-word story added to by our followers on Facebook. It grew arms and legs. Then the 20 words for 2020, with the legacy of an entertaining set of video interviews. The year culminated in a Zoom short story workshop that produced lively discussion and people sharing their writer skills. That's very important for writers, I always think. It was thoroughly enjoyed by all who attended too. Charlie, originally from Baylis in Glasgow, now lives on the edge of the Trossachs. His novel, To Live With What You Are, 2019, Postbox Press, was longlisted for the Bath Novel Award. Poetry collections Good Morning, 2010, and Tales from the Dartry Mountains, 2020, were published by Die Hard. Currently, he's working on a new novel and a poetry pamphlet. We're in for a treat as he's going to read an extract from his novel in progress, I think. Charlie's not just a fine writer, he's a thoroughly nice bloke, and it's been a joy working with you. I say that on behalf of all of the board members of the Federation of Writers. Thank you for going above and beyond as our 2020 Scriever. Charlie Gracie.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and everybody else. I should have a big speech ready, which I've been thinking about quite a lot, and but I very much appreciate the honour that it was to be asked to be the Scriever and the opportunity as well that it gave me. It was really very much appreciated. I think what I'll do is I'll maybe share a bit of my writing with you first of all, a few minutes, and then I'll reflect a wee bit on the experience. In true writer style, when I sat down to look at the section I was going to read, I thought, oh no, this needs edited and edited and edited. So that's what happens, as everybody knows. So what I'll share is the opening to a story that I did finalise during this year. So I'll share the opening section of Lost and Found. I think Colette Keown Duggan is here, so she'll have heard some of this before in the writers group that we're both in. It's called Lost and Found. I found an urn on the bus, somebody's ashes. It was one of the good Lidl's bags it was in, and it was square, so at first I thought it might be a present for someone, biscuits or whiskey even. Most urns I'd seen were round, nipped in at the neck to give them a human touch. This one was purely functional, with a plain silvery plaque engraved with RIP at the top. The space where a name would go was blank. We'd buried Dad. He lies on top of Mum, a few inches of soil, 2 slices of pressed wood, and 18 months distant from her. I imagine that the worms made fat on her will now wait until his coffin wood softens so they can ease their way in and start on him. The person whose ashes were in the urn would never be eaten by worms. Dad, on the other hand, would never have suffered the ignominy of being left in a Lidl's bag in the number 62. The driver said, "Take it to the lost and found." I said, "Why can't I leave it with you?" He was squeamish. His brother hadn't long died, but I knew that was just an excuse, really. He couldn't be bothered. I was about to tell him that when his eyes filled up. I've always been a soft arse, so I did it. When Dad was laid into the ground, I threw a handful of sodden earth on top of the coffin. They'd offered me dry sand from a box, but that seemed too sanitised. The stuff I threw in was like mud, sticky in my hands, not a clean scattering of particles, more a spludge. The woman at the lost and found looked inside the Lidl's bag, then smiled at me. "I hate these ones," she said. She folded the top of the bag back over the urn and placed both hands on the counter. How could somebody forget an urn, a loved one? Maybe they weren't loved. I was surprised to hear the words come out of my mouth because till then it hadn't occurred to me that it was anything more than carelessness or drunkenness. "Well, a stack of them through there," said the woman, flicking her hand over her shoulder. "There must have been," she looked up at the ceiling, "7 at least in the last few months." She shook her head. "Strange when you think about it." "Will somebody come for them?" "Once this year." "What about the rest?" "Don't know really," she said. "The council take them away every November, any of the ones that have been lying for more than 3 months. I tried to imagine what would happen to them. Perhaps they mix the ashes in with those of the loved, make sure they would eventually have some kind of fondness. Perhaps they put them in the plot in Dildowie, where all the anonymous are. She looked at me. "I'll go in the back and get the book." Once she'd gone, I opened the bag. The lid of the urn glinted greyly. I thought about the person inside. A woman, a man, too big for a child. And it would likely be white anyway, or have a wee angel on it, or footprints. Rita's baby had that, wee blue footprints etched into a bulbous, shiny urn. I picked the bag up from the counter and headed out into the sunshine. Okay, so that's the opening to Lost and Found. The story was, I'm not going into too much detail about it, but you might be interested to know that the story was partly inspired by one of these kind of facts from local councils where they recounted the number of urns that were left along with the number of umbrellas and all that kind of stuff in public transport. And it struck me that, my goodness, leaving an urn on a bus. And the other part of the story, or the inspiration, was that my friend had an ex-partner's dog cremated for her, and those ashes have sat still beside his television set, and that's about 9.5 years ago that he cremated the dog. So poor Polly still sits in his living room in a bag. So those two facts kind of combined for me to create this story, which hopefully you'll read somewhere one day. I'll not repeat everything that Jennifer has said about what happens during my year as Scriever. We had such high hopes. I was I did get to the Solway first, but that was in a replacement holiday for going to France. I stayed in Gatehouse of Fleet for a few days and had a great time. Caught up with a number of writers when we were down there too, but didn't do an event down there. But it still was a great pleasure, and you know, the lack of face-to-face forces you online, and I think I've discovered a number of possibilities, and if I had another lockdown year to do, I would probably have even more imaginative ideas, because there wouldn't be the same disappointment. Jennifer had blamed me for the good work undertaken online, and I think I'd have to just note that Jennifer, Harley and Caroline Johnson were very heavily involved in the discussions about what is it that we can actually do. And without the support of Jennifer and Caroline, as well as other people, of course, then that wouldn't have been possible. So thank you both, and thanks to everybody for the support. It's been a really positive year. I've linked in with a lot of people individually over the piece, and of course my fellow traveller was Finola Scott, who's somebody I know well. She's now waving, and she and I have been in a writers group over the last 2 or 3 years together as well, along with Colette. So it was good kind of bouncing off Finola in terms of ideas and how we're both managing that. The person that came before me was Olga Wojtas, and everybody will know what a great writer Olga is. And of course, I'm being succeeded by the wonderful Leela Sommer, which is a great joy to be kind of sandwiched between those two writers in a list, you know. So I appreciate that as well, and I wish Leela all the very best. We had a slightly bizarre handover in the car park at the Old Inns service station in Cumbernauld, where Leela broke the lockdown rules by travelling from East Dunbartonshire to North Lanarkshire, and I broke them right back by travelling from Stirling area to North Lanarkshire. So we're very, very sorry to have landed the Federation of Writers in such soapy, hot water, sorry, with the authorities, because they'll no doubt be watching this and coming after us to punish us roundly for it. But we had an attempt at videotaping, videoing on the phone this handover. I had this idea that it was like the 53rd parallel, where we were laying the shield down, and then somebody else would come up with King Jong-un at their side and pick it up and go. But it wasn't quite as dramatic as that. But I wish Leela all the best, and thank you again, everybody, for a lovely opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Charlie. So, as announced at our anthology launch, I'm absolutely delighted to introduce Leela Sommer as our Scriever for 2021. Leela was born in Madras, India, and now lives in Glasgow. Her poems and short stories have been published in a number of anthologies. She's published 2 novels and 2 collections of poetry. Some of her work reflects her dual heritage of India and Scotland. She won the Margaret Thompson Davis Trophy for her first novel, and was nominated for the Pushcart Prize and the Airbus Prize 2020. A chapbook by Dreek will also be published in the summer of 2021. Her third and latest novel is a crime thriller, Murder at the Mela, published by Ringwood Publishing. Both Leela and Jim are raring to go, and I look forward to working with them next year. So normally at this point, I would ask Charlie to hand over the shield and the scroll to Leela. Charlie did manage to get the shield to Glasgow, but the scroll is still in transport, and that's over a week and a half it's been on its way. So I'm now going to ask Charlie to say a few words to his successor, and then introduce Leela to give us some readings. Thank you.
I slightly jumped the gun with that, Jennifer. I suppose the thing I would say to Leela is that there are different forms of praise, I suppose, or positive feedback that we get as writers. It's a very soul or solitary kind of activity, partly because we do the writing mostly on our own, we do the editing mostly on our own, we do the sending out and waiting for stuff to come back, rejections or acceptances mostly on our own. And we also bring it all from inside us, you know, and as best we can. And being part of the Federation is a real boost for everybody, and to have been given an accolade like being asked to be Scriever or Makar is very much that. I hope, Leela, that you have a less lockdowny kind of year ahead of you. I think, you know, I do hope that happens, and I'm sure with your energy and your beautiful creativity that you'll be able to make the best of the lockdown half and the open half that hopefully awaits you. You can rely very, very heavily on Jennifer and Caroline and other people for good support, and you can also expect to be given your head very well as well. There's a sense of support but not control, and I think that's something to assure you of, that it's a positive and very, very encouraging kind of atmosphere to be formally involved in. So I suppose I would reiterate my thanks to the Federation, Jennifer and Caroline and others, and to Marie-Therese for today, and I hope that you, Leela, have as wonderful a time as I did. So I'll pass on to Leela Sommer.
I'll just come in there for a minute, Charlie, because I forgot to say that we have a substitute, and we are going to have the shield presented to Leela in our own home.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, everyone.
Scriever 2021, Leela Sommer.
I don't know if you heard it. That's my better half, who very kindly handed the beautiful shield. And I can't thank all of you enough, and my dear husband too, to do this, the honor as such. So thanks again. And Charlie and Jennifer gave a wonderful introduction as such. Just like Charlie, because I know the Federation for years on end, I just did not prepare a speech, and I just feel it's informal enough. I'm amongst friends. So basically, I just want to say a huge amount of thanks to people who have been you know, with me for, you know, years and years. Can I mention particularly A.C. Clark, Sheila Templeton, Gayle Smith, you know, Maggie Rabatsky, people who have been there from, I think, almost the founders as such. And recently, people like Caroline Johnston, Jennifer Harley, Marie-Therese. A Federation has been, as Charlie said, a kind of a rock, a foundation, a support. And I think I took up writing, you know, more as a kind of after my retirement, and to have had so much support has been absolutely wonderful as such. So I can't thank you enough. When I was asked what you felt about becoming a Scriever, apart from having to look up the word, of course, like everyone asked, what is the exact meaning? So I had to make sure that I got it absolutely right. I'm absolutely thrilled. And what I find is, I look back a wee bit and thought, where did my love of words begin? You know, and it's really because born in a household, you know, surrounded with books from day one. The earliest memories of my mom, my dad, my grandfather, some of my aunts, mom, all of them loving literature. You know, when you're surrounded by books, it's something that it almost gets into your DNA. And I do remember The school was very similar. Of course, in India during the summer, it's extremely hot and you can't really go out and play all the time. So you tend to sit inside in the cool of the house as such. And I do remember one of the things was we had to make little scrapbooks and use things like words of alliteration or find new words in the dictionary. And amongst the siblings, it was a question of who got the nice sentence with a new word, you know, so that was a kind of a challenge that we all enjoyed, apart from having lovely ice cream and something cool that we could have. The Sherbet Lemons, that one of the poems that people read, you know, took me back a wee bit about, you know, lemonade was the end thing. Nimbu pani is what it's called. Lots of ice, cold, cool, to cool off as such. I think my writing career has kind of swayed between writing prose, getting the 2 novels, and then poetry in between. And I must say that it's this passion to actually find the connection between India, Scotland, India, and the United Kingdom. There is so much of it, and there is so much that is not yet in the mainstream. So I often try to get that as much as possible in my work as such. And I hope it's something that people do enjoy reading. The 3rd novel, because I know that it's been getting on a bit today, so I'll read a very short extract, if I may. Wouldn't even last you a minute or so. I noticed that all 3 of our Scrievers, Charlie, as well as Olga before, have all been writing crime novels, so crime must pay. But this is my debut crime novel, and I do hope that people will enjoy it as such. I must also thank people like Finola, who've always been there when it comes to poetry, and you know, all the others who've been in the Federation of Writers. And if you look at the newsletter that AC Clark sends every month to us, is just amazing. It's just wonderful. And this afternoon was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So thanks to MT and Jennifer, as well as Mark, who made it such an enjoyable first session as such. I look forward to listening to Finola and Jim. So here's a very, very short extract. It is a murder, as you can imagine. It's called Murder at the Mela. So I'll read a very, very short extract and say goodbye to you and thank you. But of course, I'll stay on to listen to the poems. Death. He had accomplished what he wanted. He had followed her into the park. He went as close to her as possible. She turned to look at him, exposing her soft throat, and he drew the sharp blade against her neck. Feeling her weight as she slumped against him, gave him a shock just for a moment. He quickly pushed her away and stepped back as a sudden gush of red splattered on the bush beside them. He watched as her body buckled down and fell on the ground. The blood gushed out of her neck, forming a pool in the dark. He saw her body go into spasms. Then he waited till the breath left her. Job done. He didn't feel any guilt. What should he feel after killing someone? The anger did not subside. That void in his chest was still there. It was filled with hatred. He checked that his clothes were not blood-stained. He took it off, his plastic mark off, that had some bloodstains on it. He cleaned the knife with a leaf using his gloved hand. He glanced once more at the body. He felt like he was outside his own body, high on a drug. He slunk away into the darkness. Thank you. So that's bloody and gory. I hope you'll pick it up. But it's more about the first Scottish Asian detective inspector. So thank you again for listening to me, and I hope to meet all of you and do as well as I can. I'll do my best.
Thank you. That was wonderful, if not a bit worrying. I'll be pushing myself when I'm in the parks from now on. Thank you so much. That was lovely.
Thank you.
Now we're going to say a bit about Finola, and this is a bittersweet time. We've worked closely over the year, and it's been an absolute pleasure, Finola. You may not be aware of this, Finola, but you are the 13th Makar. I don't know if that explains some of this. I'm just saying that. The honour was created in 2008, and our very own AC Clark, who've spoken about her newsletter, was the first recipient as Makar. She's still working tirelessly for the Federation. So after our meeting with Charlie and Stirling, Finola, you wanted to visit more places in Scotland. Oban, Eyemouth, Wigton, Stranraer, Aberdeen were all on the agenda. However, the contributions were also curtailed. You began with a virtual collective poem on Facebook entitled A Recipe for Joy. That was a brilliant afternoon, and our followers embraced the bacon theme. After that, you had your virtual road trip, delivering workshops throughout Scotland, inviting folk by their postcodes. I attended one of those, and I found myself transported back to memories I'd almost forgotten just through talking about clothes. So the workshops were an inspiration and very enjoyable. Thank you. Finola's been busy. Our pamphlet, Much Left Unsaid, published by Red Squirrel Press, is a terrific read, and our poem, Braw Lassies, produced by Stellar Kleins, is in the Federation Arbroath anthology when it comes out, to whom it may concern. In the pipeline, she has a publication from Taplotere, Modern Makars, where she shares the title Makar with two women poets, Anne McKinnon and Irene Howitt. While locked in, she writes, and since December last year, she's had a wealth of poems published in magazines, newspapers, and online sites. The Postie busily brings anthologies containing her work, from collections about new towns to political responses to the climate crisis. Her poems earned readers' awards from Ink, Sweat and Tears and Orbis. Finola has been on radio, has her work in art exhibitions and recorded video readings, as well as taking part in dozens of workshops. Here's to next year. Good luck to you, Finola, and we'd love to hear from you now.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody in the Federation. As Charlie said, and Leela also, it is a big support network, and that's what I've always felt about it. It was Etta Dunn, past chairperson, who coerced me to coming, and I never regretted it because it is a superb network. That's why I was so excited at the prospect of travelling to different parts of Scotland and meeting members. The doing it on Zoom at first terrified me, but in fact it was an absolute delight. I mean, one of the evidence is that Lindsay, who I met through the workshops, was here this afternoon reading, and it was particularly poignant because Lindsay said she wouldn't have been able to come to an actual physical event. So that was a very nice dimension to find from it. And to share work with people is always lovely, to engage with people, to hear what they have to say, and just mutual support is, I think, as Charlie said, is what you need. I don't find writing a lonely event because, I mean, sometimes I laugh with this lockdown. Before 10 o'clock, I might have had 5 conversations with people, and then I'm in a Zoom workshop that day. So there are ways around things, and I think we're all very lucky that we're able to do that and to have the time and the equipment. I am excited to be handing over to Jim. Is it time for me to talk about that, or shall I wait till later to talk about that?
It's entirely up to you, Finola. You know me, I'm easy. I mean,
I really enjoy the fact that it was Stephen Watt who handed over to me, and I'm handing over to Jim, because Stephen and Jim and I and lots of other people in the Federation have connections through Jim's football project. It was Stephen, when Stephen first put out the thing about writing a poem about football, I said, no, behave yourself. You know, don't be silly here, Stephen. I don't know anything about football. So as usual, Stephen threw down the gauntlet. And I just can't leave a gauntlet lying there. I'm terrible. You'd think I was house proud. I'm not, but gauntlets, I pick them up. So because of Stephen's challenge, I was involved with Jim and his football. And because of Jim, I ended up reading at the Scottish Parliament, Stanza Poetry Festival, the Edinburgh Book Festival, and the Wigton Book Festival, all on the strength of football poems. So I'm extremely grateful to one Makar and handing over to the next one, who is the same as Stephen, with that same energy. So I think I also like Charlie, I want to thank particularly you and Caroline and, well, the committee, Marie-Therese, who organised this. But I couldn't have done the Zooming without you and Caroline, especially, coming on board. So I don't know, I could drivel on for ages because that's what I do. I think I'll just stop and thank everybody, and thank everybody for trusting me with the job of Makar. I did rack my brains to think how I could make this work for all our members. And again, our Broth little pamphlet that's coming out with AC Clark's idea, again with members' work being promoted, it's wonderful. Okay, so well, I just read something. This first poem, I've got three. I'm going to cut short because people are. It's running late. I'm going to read some little Christmas poems, and because of this time of year, I always think of family. So these poems have to do with my children, and they are actually sort of connected. This poem is for my daughter. Merry Mariottra, Royal Mile, Edinburgh. The big wheel stirs the stars, whips up frost feathers. Carnival crowds shriek, and you cradle your bump. In the bright bubble of your belly, cells divide. In creation's soup, flesh, eyes, and bones prepare. As Edinburgh melts, palace guards sport party hats, and you feel your baby kick, ripe, round, and ready. Toes, shins, and hands clamour escape. As solstice dark surrenders, wise men sure, you light our way. There's no need for inns or Christmas markets, for glühwein, pretzels, or poppets. Cradling sweet fullness, too big to button up tight, you carry the perfect gift. So that's for Zoe. That poem, I should probably say, is going to be in One Hand Clapping's Christmas bumper issue, but I do have permission to read it. And this poem follows on. This is for my son, who travelled up from London to be with his sister and the new baby. Night watch, Haymarket Station. It's past 11 on Christmas Eve, and I'm swaddled in the echoing station. You call and text all day with staccato bulletins of weather and delays, frozen rails, pointless, grey lakes and hills blinded by blizzards. Migrating field fares blown off course. Now I'm here and nearly you. Arrival boards flash, happy as tinsel. Trains glide into the castle lee. No Santa Express, but eager diesels. Suddenly you're there, striding tall, You wave semaphore, heft your bag, scarlet scarf, gloves, gift wrapped for Scotland. Then you're in my arms, my winter visitor, on course. And this is a true, based on a true story. It's when I used to go picnics with my children, which I did all the time, and I was very persistent, and I would go, and even in this time of year we would go a picnic, but sometimes the timing went wrong and I would end up in the woods at Ballad and it'd be dark. But one time I did it and the kids refused to sit in the car with their picnic. They wanted to go out into the woods. So I've written this poem. This poem has been chosen by Ink, Sweat and Tears for one of their Advent calendar dates. So I think it's going to be coming out at January, or maybe the beginning of January, I'm not sure. So, Tasting the Dark. As a tired sun sinks, neither day nor night, cusping winter, wrap up in coziness, button snug, wear a Santa hat. Load your picnic basket, swaddle soft sourdough, oven warm in linen napkins. Tuck in flavours of home, salmon smoked slow, scented with bracken and moors. Fill those felt stockings, gold embroidered. Pop tangerines in toes, slip in chocolate coins. Settle in a time-carved hollow, ready to trap the butter-bright moon in a mesh of branches. Listen to the moss sneak as owls and foxes share this midwinter feast. Ask, do stars taste sweeter than shadows? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Finola. Wonderful as always. So now going to move on to our Federation marker for 2021, Jim Mackintosh. Jim is the marker of the Catalan Eco Museum, a museum without walls, celebrating the landscapes and treasures of East Perthshire and the Angus Glens. He's also, as Finola mentioned, poet-in-chief at the Hampden Collection, raising awareness of both Glasgow and Scotland's importance in the birth of world football. He's poetry editor of Nutmeg magazine, the only sports journal in the UK with a poetry section. I think you've actually got my son interested in poetry. That's wonderful. An author of 6 collections of poetry, the latest being Flipstones, published by Tippermuir Books in 2018, and editor of 2 anthologies, Mind the Time and Football Memories, and The Dard, celebrating the centenary of Hamish Henderson's birth. Jim is currently spinning the following plates: 2 solo books, Glisskins, a collection of short verse and black ink sketches, and Anonymous Skies, a follow-on collection from Flipstones. 2 anthologies, The Hand of David, a collection of new poetry celebrating Scotland's men's football team actually qualifying for something. And secondly, Tapestry, an anthology of new poems celebrating the centenary of George Mackay Brown's birth. A theatre production of Hamish Henderson's elegies for the death in Cirenaica influences a collaborative contemporary dance production, weaving movement with spoken word, sound and images. He's also working on such diverse projects as Perth Theatre, responding to lockdown of the arts industry through the voices of actors and the audience, and Hidden Voices, which is encouraging poetry from inmates across Scotland's prison estate currently. Christmas themed, but with a football specific project being launched in the spring. Finola also managed to get the Shield up to Perth, and we're now going to have a virtual handover. Finola, did you want to say anything else? I believe that Jim's wife's standing by to hand him the...
No, I just know that Jim is going to be a wonderful maker, because he has a great way with people and a great energy. When Jim takes something on, gosh, you know about it, you know, and that's quite clearly seen by what he did for the football project. And I was also involved, I was also involved with the Hamish Henderson, and that was a fabulous thing. And Jim just makes these things happen out of nothing. Now, I'm not wanting to put a pressure on him because I know he's a busy man, but you know, Jim will be a cracking maker, I know that.
Hello, yes, stand by. We're on. Drum roll.
Yay!
Santa's getting the heave, I'm afraid, because there's only...
Yay!
If I break that, we're in trouble. And a scroll. Which arrived yesterday, Jennifer, in a big long, well, I think it was actually a series of 3 doot and do's. You didn't know what a doot and do was, but you know, a doot and do, that one of them, you know. So thank you very much, everybody. So and to my better half, who's nervously slipping out the corner here, doesn't want to be involved in any of this.
I don't blame her.
Yes, thank you. Is it me? Shall I move on? Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Finola, for your generous introductions. And if I may add my admiration and complete respect for my good friend Finola, for her determined efforts to navigate her way this makership through such a tragic bourach of a year, and still bring kind of brilliance to the post with imagination and humour, and having to pivot to this online Zoom world. And to me, and I reckon to a lot of the audience here, a Zoom should be a nice lolly for the 60s and nowhere else. But as she did point out, it gives us a global reach and gives us the ability to engage with poets and writers who can't, and for geographical or physical reasons or whatever, can't get to events. So that is the little bonus, I think, of there are some positives to come out of pandemics, I guess. But I was, when the package arrived yesterday, I was slightly disappointed because it was all beautifully wrapped in a Silent Night electric blanket box. And I thought, so when I opened it and found there was this muckle beast of a shield, I was a bit disappointed that Finola hadn't given me for my Christmas an electric blanket. But to be fair, that was very brief, and I was lost under the just overwhelming chuffedness. Is that a word? I was fair chuffed, and I am. So thank you to the past makers for entrusting me with this role. Thank you to everybody who keeps the word network has just been used. And I mean, I've just sat here today, and it is a genuine, there's a lovely phrase, the kiss to riches, which goes back into Hamish Henderson world and Toharadochis, and that's what we have today, as a kiss to riches. And I did note that Finola was number 13. Well, I'm number 14, so that puts enough for 11-a-side football team with 3 subbies. I don't know who's going in goals, Finola, you or I think, but so thank you all. Hopefully I'll meet as many of you during the year as the pandemics and vaccines will allow. I suspect there'll be a few months where we'll still be doing this, and hopefully we'll tentatively steps out into the real world again to some sort of new normal, whatever that would look like. But meantime, I get to read and learn and be inspired by so many of you. So every one of you that's read today has got my utmost respect for doing that. So thank you. Do I read now, or do I hand back to you, Jennifer? I read. Wow. I'll just take a wee drink out of my glass first. Honestly, it's water.
Well, it may be gin actually. This is a poem called Rattling Cans, which I think is quite appropriate for this time of year. It's based on a true story of a lad that I got to know, 30, nearly 40 years ago, who lived on the top tier of an old house that was one of the mill houses in Perth before it was demolished. And he set up a wee weave of string and cans with marbles in it as a kind of alarm system so you couldn't disturb them. And it's called Rattling Cans. The only witnesses to him were the peeling tea roses on the mill house walls, their fading beauty blackened by bitumen reek from the slow burn death of a railway sleeper. A 3-foot stub of its original length. His right foot nudging it a little more into the crumbled edge of a fire barely lit, slumbering in the clamp of the one room, in the one house still standing. His fortress, his last stand, alarmed and bound by a web of string and rattling cans, and cats, patrolling the curved sooty edge of the fading sleeper glow. They said he was a spy. They said he was a boozer. They said he was lost. He was none of those. He didn't need to be found. I could get as far as halfway up through the staircase web, enough to rattle cans, leave him stuff, apples and bread and milk for the cats. He was an old soldier. He didn't need to be found. He'd done that himself. I met him once more the day they knocked his home down. He gave me a bundle of notes of words and treasures beyond me and how I wish I'd kept them. They put him in a shelter. He died the very next day. He'd found a way out without rattling the cans, and I had lost a wee bit of my way in. So when cans are rattled under your noses, think of peeling tea roses and think of him. Thank you. So, I think it says somewhere that I write in Scots, so I think I better read something in Scots. I thought I was prepped for all of this, and I've actually changed the poems I'm going to do 3 times since we started this afternoon. So hopefully this is called Hunkert Doon and was written on the top of a very big dune north of Dornoch on Embo Beach, which overlooks Galsby and the Duke of Sutherland, the Manny on the hill above there. And there's a wee film poem somewhere, I think if you go onto Vimeo or YouTube, I think it's on both of them actually, we did on the top of it. It's called Hunkert Doon. On the Platy, a sanctuary of sorts, up thon muckle June we ca'd Snell's Hill, where folk now spile their holidays with yon boot camp pechin gowkiness in their stretchy peery breeks. I watched the machers sook in the tide and the sand surrender its hurdies, and the osprey fecht the teawits for its supper, and the wains merrimit threading in, and a burnt log post sausage sizzle, new slumpet and casting awa. Midst a saft drift o' yesterday's mindings, stitching their sherries to the breakwater, afore folding under the hypocrite's gaze, on glowering Manny aboon Galsby, still seeking his stool of repentance yet. And I sat and sup at the slayberry rose, a scurry vague puzzling over a blank page, with a mind sharp yet a pencil sharper. And I kent it then and I kent it now. I was 1,000 year old, primed with 1,000 year ahead of me. But rich now, here on Embo Beach, the world was lichtsome in my hand, yet foo to the gunnels of my heart. And whiles the blackheads didna ken it, their skittering cabal was a comfort to me here on my perch, leaf lane for a' the world's thraw didna steal my dram-sweet destination of thought. Hunkert Doon here on Snell's Hill. Thank you. Through all this tragic bourich that we've been living, I've been writing some poems. So here's one from just a couple of weeks ago when all the vaccination news started to come around. And this poem's called "Does Good News Come in Vials?" And it struck me that, yeah, of course it does, but I fear that we're going to lose a lot of the positive things that we've found of ourselves and our friends and families, and also the world about us. In terms of, one of the things for me was climate change, where all of a sudden, very, very quickly, they started to produce, global images where actually it's amazing when you stop driving around in cars and all of a sudden it made a difference. Does good news come in vials? Yesterday I could smell the fear, feel the tightening on the rope, straining to stop us all at the edge one last time, sitting here watching the news gather pace. On and on, everything we've learned about decency, about how shit normally actually was. Do you remember the satellite images of a planet catching its breath? Is anyone taking notes? Does anyone care if the rope breaks? It would be one or two less in the queue of the vaccine urgent, or the ones who think they are, the ones who will jump the queue laden with cash. We had the chance, maybe just this once, to chain the selfish to their greed, the shun of the helpless huddled in the ditch banned from crossing the bitfrost. We will replace opportunity with blinkered normals, inequality with reinforced inequality. We will burn the crops with share certificates for shameless profit. And something so sad will run down the red wheels on frontline faces tired of masks. Let them go home. Our survival will at most seem an afterthought. Thank you. How are we doing for time, Jennifer? Am I okay? Yeah.
Cheers, boss.
Keep going. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
One more.
Yeah, one more, and then MT is going to finalise the whole
It
thing.
would be very wrong, given that Finola has graciously mentioned football, that I didn't bore you all with a football poem. So I've tried to give you a flavour of everything, but this one is dedicated to my father, who would come home from watching St Johnstone for about 300 years, blue with the cold, and be defrosted in front of the electric 3-bar fire saying, "I'm never going back, that's it, I'm never going back." We might have won 5-0, but he was never going back. And then he would trudge away the next week. So it's all entirely his fault. I mean, I've been a St Johnstone supporter since before I was born. I had no choice in the matter. So this is called, So What Is This Called? Or The History of Scunnered. The history of Scunnered includes all of us in our shades of team colours, joy, misery, and everything in between. Me, I stare into a glass, sharpen a pencil, stare some more, and nothing happens. I should be used to Scunnered, such that we share a season ticket and know each other intimately. I will now do an hour of mourning for the missed chances, followed by an hour of hee-haw. I will blame all known gods. I do it shamelessly, will feel good because I've done it so many times. Then I will empty the glass in a oneer, feeling resolved although nothing ever is. And that's what you get for following your club. I could have picked another team, I could have picked another sport, but no, I didn't. And I understand this result was just another knee in the bollocks from the back catalogue of lifelong purgatory wrapped in a shiny film of temptation, taped down with false promise. I listen to the radio and ignore the comments, the social media posts, the tags, the feeds, and I smile. There is something wrong with me besides the Scunnered. So I fill the glass once more and I retrieve the season ticket from behind the telly. Thank you. And I'll finish off by saying, I hope you all have a joyous Christmas as best as you can, but please stay safe. Thank you.
Fabulous, Jim. That was just a treat, and I know we're in for 365 days of more. Thank you very, very much. Lovely to see you again as well. Shadow of your former self, though you are.
Yeah.
Anyway, now our very last performance is going to be with our very first compere. Mark is going to give us the toast to Scotia. Mark, are you ready? And I'd like to thank everybody who stayed with the event till now. I'm sure you think this has been really very well worthwhile to hear our Makars, our Scrievers, everybody. Thank you for staying. Thank you for coming. Mark?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Some of you will know that Robert Burns often took a piece that already existed and kind of embellished it one way or another. Now, I'm not laying claim to his talent, but I was recently asked to give a toast to Scotia, and I looked around and I found a piece that wasn't quite right, wasn't quite fit for purpose. So I've repurposed it, and hopefully it will be a suitable thing to think about today and to think about for the new year coming. So toast to Scotia. It's my place to say we'll any fears. Glorious Scotia, the place we hold dear. Here's to the mon of all classes and the bonny, bonny lasses. May ye aye keep hale and hearty till you're old enough to dee. May ye aye be just as happy as I wish ye aye to be. May those who live truly be always believed, and those who deceive always be deceived. May the hand of friendship reach, and may your plenty never end. May you always learn and teach that good acquaintance makes a friend. May the lure of Scotland's beauty make all good folk ken their duty. Lift up and raise your glasses for whatever lang sign passes. Frae mountains to lowlands with joyful tear, your good health and that of Scotland. Cheers.
Thanks so much, Mark. That's fantastic. I'll hand back to Jennifer now, who'll close the event.
I'd just like to thank everybody for sticking with us. This event is normally a coming and going event, and it does last a long time. I hope you're not too weary, but how could you be weary with all these wondrous readings that we've had? We've been on a wonderful journey. We've been Christmas and COVID together. We've spoken about mothers, about fathers, bodies, how can ties, the emotions of love, losing folk, trials, grief, tragedy, learning how to draw again, and memories. It's been a wondrous event. Thank you, everybody. Thank you especially to Finola and to Charlie, to MT and to Mark. And I'm so looking forward to next year. And let's all keep our fingers crossed and get our arms ready for that vaccination so we can all meet together again. Thank you all very much. Those readings were wonderful.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I mean, I know how tirelessly you've worked to put today together. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.